Welcome everyone to session 11 of the 14th European Space Conference, a session that I hold quite dear. It's a topic that is quite dear to me, both international relations and, of course, sustainable use of space. So this morning we have the high-level roundtable on international space relations for the sustainable use of space. I apologize, of course, for the slight delay that we have had because of the other part of the conference, but voilà, we will make sure to catch up, and we have a little time to play with at the end in any case, so we don't necessarily need to cut the debate short. Now, so the session will bring together various, as you can see, and as I will show you, European and international partners to discuss how the various space actors from across the world can come together to find a common way forward for the sustainable use of space. You know, what actions are currently being undertaken in the various parts of the world to ensure the continued access and use of space? What guidelines are being followed by the various actors? What are the areas of potential collaboration in this domain between the various actors, and how do we get there? So these are some of the questions that we will be asking and answering today. Now, I'm joined both here and online from across the world by an excellent panel of speakers. I have with me here Mr. Eric Morel de Vescave, Director of European Legal and International Matters for the European Space Agency. I have also, on behalf of the European Commission of DG DEFIS, Ms. Jolanda van Eindhoven. I have from the External Action Service, Ms. Karin Kleis, the EU Special Envoy for Space. And I also have with me remotely Mr. Yasuo Ishii, Vice President for Strategic Planning and International Relations from JAXA. Very, very happy to have you with us. We have Mr. Vasily Gudov, the Multilateral Cooperation Division, the International Cooperation Department of Roscosmos. Also very happy to have you with us. We have Mr. Tidiane Ouattara, the coordinator of the GMS and Africa Support Program of the African Commission. Happy to have you with us as well. And last, of course, but by no means least, Mr. Stephen Earle, Manager of Space Policy and Outreach Branch of the Office of Commercial Space Transportation of the Federal Aviation Authority from the United States of America. So it's a brilliant panel. Thank you all for joining us today. I know that it's there are with the different time zones for certain of you. It's somewhat difficult. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the States it's like 3 in the morning. So thank you very much for being with us today. So I'm going to launch straight into the debate with a general question that I think I'll ask the entire panel. So, what are your views on the safe and sustainable use of outer space, first of all? And concretely, how does your organization contribute to ensuring the safe and sustainable use of outer space? I would like to start with Mr. Eric Morel de Vescave here. Please.
So, good morning. I think yesterday we had a number of panels and also speeches, and from there it was very obvious. We have heard that from the Commissioner Breton, we have heard that from the Belgian Prime Minister, we have heard that from a lot of other participants. They told us that the question of sustainable use of space is extremely important, extremely high on the agenda, and a real priority. I think that's really the message we have heard yesterday, and I would like to underline that also for ESA. This is really a priority. Why a priority? Because this was also said yesterday, the risk is higher than ever. We have heard a number of figures yesterday about the evolution of the risk, the number of satellites, the number of debris. So really that is the message. Priority and urgency. Then you were asking what are the agencies, or what ESA in particular is doing. We have a space safety program that is ongoing. This program is, of course, complementary to actions undertaken by the Commission and by our member states. We have also, and that is really a premiere that has started, a mission for active debris removal called ClearSpace One that is presently under development. So that is the second action, how to clean the orbit. And of course, the third line of action is to reduce or to suppress the debris created by agencies. We have the ESA space debris mitigation compliance verification guidelines that are today public, and the aim of those actions is to make the ESA mission debris-free.
Excellent, perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sort of exchange European and non-European, because I think that would be a good way to proceed. So I'd like to, for the same question, give the floor over, please, to Mr. Yasuo Ishii from JAXA. Please, sir, you have the floor.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for inviting me to this international conference. And yes, the question is very important. And as Mr. Morel explained, JAXA also put a very high priority to the debris issues. Because one of the challenges is ensuring the safe and sustainable use of outer space is the issue of space debris. The number of observable space debris has increased significantly over the past 20 years, posing a fatal risk of fatal collision to the satellite. So it becomes very important issues for us. And what we are doing is of course, we are doing the debris collision avoidance maneuver for our satellite. And the case of this maneuver is increasing recently. So we are feeling that the situation is becoming very serious. And of course, as Mr. Morel said, the JAXA also has the very specific guidelines for mitigate the space debris from the spacecraft or rocket. And in addition to that, we started the research and development with the Japanese company to have the debris removal demonstration with Japanese private company. That company is trying to start the new market of this debris removal, and we are providing the technical knowledge or the result of our R&D technologies. And in addition to that, the Japanese government is also put the very high priority to this issue, and they are discussing to create the guidelines for the space in-orbit service operations. And they opened the guideline last year. And we supported to develop this guideline with government level people. So far, that's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir, for your messages. Now, back to Europe, Ms. Jolande van Eindhoven. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, for the European Union, it is important to demonstrate that besides building infrastructures, we also find it very important to properly protect them and to ensure a safe and secure space environment. Now, already in 2014, the European Union decided to enter into the space surveillance and tracking activities and to establish the EU SST consortium comprising of member states with adequate assets and capacities to deliver the related services. And indeed, since 2016, these services are are delivered. And actually we provide now collision avoidance, re-entry, but also fragmentation services. Now 5 years down the line, the European Union has been able to establish a network that delivers SST services to 90 European organizations originating from 18 member states, and actually providing to 240 satellites, which includes Galileo and Copernicus satellites, collision avoiding service. Now, with the new established EU space regulation, these SST services are now more into a more holistic space situational awareness, SSA. And SSA has now a legal status of a full space component, like the others, Galileo and Copernicus and EGNOS, and complementing SST services with prospective space weather and near Earth objects. To ensure actually a long-term sustainable use of space by limiting the production of space junk, by avoiding the generation of new debris, but also developing instruments to remove the current debris. But of course, it doesn't stop here, and as it's been discussed yesterday, and of course also already highlighted by Erik, there are two threats, satellite congestion and debris proliferation, and there is something we need to do. Now, as the European Union, we consider ourselves, and this was also, of course, highlighted by our Commissioner yesterday, Europe is a space power, which means that we have a legitimate interest, but of course also an obligation to occupy a distinct place in the discussion on the next global task for a space traffic management. And we promote and are committed to a multilateral approach, and I'm absolutely sure that Karin Kleijs will go into that much more than I have to do. But for us, it's important that we act now, that we act swiftly, collectively, and resolutely. And to that extent, we are very happy that we will be able, jointly with the European External Action Service, to come up with a communication which will encompass an EU STM approach already this February. And I will leave it there to give the floor to Karin later.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Now, I would like to give the floor to Mr. because I know that he needs to leave a little bit earlier, so I'm going to give the floor to him now before he leaves us. Unfortunately, he can't stay with us for the entire session. Mr. Tidiane Ouattara, I'm very, very happy to have you with us today. I know that we won't be able to see you, but I'm certain we will be able to hear you, and I'm certain we're all extremely eager to hear what you have to say on this matter.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jorge. I would say thanks to the organizers for inviting African Union Commission. And indeed, the sustainable use of outer space, I would take it another way. Instead of talking about the technical approaches as as explained by our colleagues, I would look at it through two angles. The regulatory framework. It will be very important for the space community to work on regulatory tools that will allow even countries that do not have space agencies and space tools to be also involved in all discussions related to the use of the space. That is very important. Then people will think that they are also taking the ownership. Secondly, the sustainability resides in the user's needs satisfaction. What does it mean? For us, whatever we develop in space or on space matters should be able to address the human or the population's needs. Because what is very important and critical, if there are needs to use space to address daily use or daily needs, people will be more interested in supporting the space community. Space should not be seen as just the race to moon, the race to the other planet. It should be seen as science and technology addressing daily matters of the population. This is where the sustainability for us resides, because there will be politicians, there will be investors to support our scientific and technology actions in this space. These are the two angles from our side we would like to bring to the space community attention. And again, in Africa, we have three types of countries. We have the countries that are pioneers in space. I can quote Egypt, South Africa, Algeria, etc. You have the newcomers, Ethiopia, Gabon, Kenya, and others. And you also have countries that do not have space policy, that do not have space agencies, but they are big consumers of space products. All the African countries are big consumers of telecommunication by satellite, GPS, etc., and Earth observation. From the African Union Commission side, the fact that GMSN Africa is an opportunity to use space technology and science for natural resources, water, marine and coastal areas resources, sustainable use and management. For that reason, we think the African community will continue supporting the space development. This is where also the sustainability resides, addressing the needs of the population. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tidjamata. A very important message there that you're passing on. So thank you very, very much for that message. I would like to now give the floor to Mr. Vasily Gudov of Roscosmos, please.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I'm very glad to join you. And in our point of view, then we are talking about the sustainable and peaceful use of photo space. It's quite a little bit different from that agenda item we have on COPIOS on Scientific and Technical Subcommittee. It talks about the long-term sustainability of space activities, and we have two different approaches in that case. For an individual space actor, sustainable use of photo space means that in different conditions, even sometimes not so favorable, this space actor able to realize all national space program. It's from the national view. But on international level, it means that outer space could be preserved for present and future generation. So then we discussed that topic with our colleagues from different countries, from different states. We noticed that there is two different approaches exist. One is saying that every space actor could pay attention developing new space system, more reliable, more safe, even having some special tools protecting them from in different favorable conditions. But that means that everyone should develop technology, space technology, should pay attention using special tools. But sometimes the selection of methods and tools could affect the right of another space actor. And we are talking on another approach that certainly everyone could use every means and tools. It's a common law, it's not discussable, but we are saying that it should preserve the equal rights of another space actor. This freedom of selection should be limited, then some methods and tools could affect the space activities of another space actor. It's our approach. And talking about the space debris, certainly the problem exists, and we have said many times that there are two different issues. One is preventing outer space or decreasing the growth of such space object we named space debris. I would like to notice that we still not have such a legal definition for space debris. Legally, it's space objects that belongs to launching states or state of registry. And those guidelines adopted for space debris mitigation, they could serve to decrease this growth of such kind of objects. They could be used preliminary on a step of design of spacecraft or operation with spacecraft, but it's not enough to eliminate all of such objects from outer space. And we agreed with our colleagues that there should be another tools for active removal of space debris. And we have now a special item in agenda of COPIUS saying that space debris mitigation and remediation. Remediation means active removal from outer space to preserve outer space for sustainable use for present and future generations. And this second approach is kindly more difficult from a legal aspect. Because, as I said, there is no legal definition for space debris. And if we would like to have a list of such objects we could name called space debris, we need the whole list and precise list of the whole space object in outer space. Because how we could select some part of it if we don't have information on the whole constellation. That's why we proposed creation of international information database on objects and events in space. In our point of view, it could facilitate solving this problem on active space debris removal and space traffic management issue as well. On national level, we have applied such recommendations on space debris mitigation guidelines, and we have some proposals for active space removal algorithm. We proposed it like a new guidelines for long-term sustainability, and we expect we could discuss those proposals in a special working group re-established on the field of COPIUS. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for your thoughts. I'd now like to pass the floor here with me at the Egmont Palace to Ms. Karin Kleist, the EU Special Envoy for Space. Please.
Thank you very much, George. And thank you for the previous intervention. I think that the framework has been very, very well set, both by Eric and by Didier Ouattara. I will not develop at length how space technology, data and services have become indispensable in our daily life, our economy, how space is important for our way of life, as well as for geopolitics and also for security and defense. It is an integral part of our life. And our freedom of action depends on a safe, secure, sustainable, and I shall add autonomous access and use of space. The orbital environment being a shared resources of humankind, the challenge is of all spacefaring nations and companies, but also those who are not yet active on the space business, of the space exploration, because they are users and they are potential actors on the space environment also. So needless to say that international cooperation is key. And that's very nice for me because I'm a diplomat. Indeed. And so indeed, fortunately, after years of standstill, 2019 saw a great achievement in the multilateral framework. As was indicated also by Mr. Gudov, COPIUS and subsequently the UN General Assembly adopted 21 guidelines for the long-term sustainability of outer space activities. The long-term sustainability of outer space activities is defined in the guidelines as, and I quote, the ability to maintain the conduct of space activities indefinitely into the future in a manner that realizes the objectives of equitable access to the benefit of the exploration and use of outer space for peaceful purposes, in order to meet the needs of the present generation while preserving the outer space environment for future generations. I could possibly stop there because everything is there. However, how to reach that goal is, of course, an issue. And I can say that multilateralism does work. You have indicated, Eric, how your organization contributed and still contribute to the work of COPIOS. Also on JAXA level and Roscosmos level, this contribution is notable. Indeed, since the adoption of those guidelines, a working group has been established also in the same framework to facilitate the sharing of experience, good practices, and lessons learned from the implementation of the adopted guidelines, to help raising awareness and capacity building and address new challenges for the long-term sustainability of outer space, such as mega constellations. This working group is chaired by Shri Uma Maran from the Indian Space Agency, and will meet just in a week to finalize its work plan and the 3 pillars identified. I recall implementation of the LTS, long-term sustainability guidelines, capacity building, and emerging challenges such as mega constellations. The EU and its member states will pursue their engagement in this UN COPIOS process and actively contribute to the work in Vienna, alongside partners, those present on the stage but also online, meaning all UN member states, member of COPIOS, and international intergovernment organization. And parallel to this work, and I think that Mr. Gudov has hinted at that, we are convinced that transparency and confidence-building measures and responsible behaviors can make also an important contribution to the safety, security, and sustainability of activities in outer space. Indeed, with the new technologies, we should have the aim to avoid potentially harmful interferences with the peaceful use of outer space, and to facilitate, again, the access of outer space for all, for present and for future generation. You might remember, I hope that some of you do at least, that I launched 2 years ago a public diplomacy campaign called 3SOS. 3SOS for safety, security and sustainability of outer space, but also thrice SOS, 3 times SOS. It is important to act jointly and timely, swiftly, now. We need a timely, global, common and multilateral way forward. Next to these multilateral efforts and potentially contributing to it, a number of actors in the global community address this through space traffic management, and my colleague Yolanda has mentioned it as well for the broader European framework, Eric Morel also. Without managing traffic in orbit, there will be no safe operation and therefore no long-term sustainability. Our organization, the EES, which is serving the High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security, together with the Commission, is preparing this EU approach to STM, a joint communication on space traffic management that will be adopted in the coming weeks, as Yolanda said, and that will propose ways to ensure a concrete EU contribution to this global challenge. We will look at STM comprehensively, taking into account what is needed in terms of capabilities, but also norms and multilateral cooperations. This topic is increasingly relevant for us, and you've had a long discussion on that already yesterday.
Indeed,
also.
yes.
You heard from our Commission colleague yesterday, Christoph Kaus. You heard from the chair of the SST consortium, Pascal Fauché. Capabilities are needed to protect our assets from space debris. The EU can count on the anti-collision service offered by the EU SST consortium and will further develop additional capabilities. Norms and standards should be developed too, to avoid creating additional debris. Less than 10% of the objects launched in low Earth orbit in the last 15 years have been successfully maneuvered with the aim of removing them from their orbital regime once they reach the end of their life. Less than 10%. This is incredible. Most LEO missions rely on decades-long natural decay to vacate the orbital slot they have occupied. This just cannot continue like that. We think that developing a regional system of STM can contribute to the global response, not to impose it unilaterally as the solution for all. Better to contribute to converging approaches from the various regions of the world with the final goal of a global, shall I dare saying, a federated STM system. Yet, once more, international cooperation is key to preserve a safe, secure, and sustainable outer space.
Thank you very much. There'll definitely be follow-up questions on those topics, and I can already see coming in. We have questions from the audience, which shows how important and how sort of interesting and engaging this topic is, and how timely it is as well. But before we move on, I have the absolute pleasure of giving the floor to Mr. Stephen Earle from the USA, who again, I think it's 3 a.m. for you. So a big thank you for being with us here, for your perseverance. We're very, very happy to have you here. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. When you're ready, you can send the sunlight over. That would be appreciated. Actually, thank you for the invitation. And this is a very important topic and a very important group. And I'm just impressed with the sheer magnitude of the panel that you brought together, basically covering the world. So for the United States, I'm just a small piece, and I'll get to the section that I work in. But we, in the United States, have released what is called the Space Priorities Framework, and that's a big deal for us here, where it basically kind of lays out where we're going with space, and it recognizes many of the things that have already been brought up today, that space safety and sustainability are an important priority. For the United States, space capabilities, they help us manage resources, and actually for the entire world, they help manage resources, protect people, property, environmental issues with climate change and extreme weather. All of these things are the benefits that space brings. But with that, you have to ensure the safety and sustainability for the future, and the Space Priorities Framework does, for the United States at least, put that out there and say, these are the priorities that we are working towards. And I've been working space traffic management for over a decade in those types of areas. And I'm encouraged to see the development and the direction that globally all of the actors in space have been moving, with a recognition that more needs to be done and more sharing needs to be done. We have always shared SSA data, space traffic coordination, as much as we can, and I believe the Space Priorities Framework, again, reiterates that we must continue to address this and push this out. I'm in the Department of Transportation. Our area of focus, I'm a regulator, my area is actually access into space and the space transportation area. And so what we have is the role to take the long-term sustainability The guidelines for debris from the Interagency Debris Coordinating Committee and other international or focus areas, and turn those into meaningful regulations, which is even beyond the norms. But it is very helpful to have these international fora so that we can develop a common approach, and then we can take those and push those into regulations. As the federal agency that oversees probably some of the most prolific launch operators in history, we have a unique position here to impact the future. Space debris is a significant and growing problem, and managing that is probably handled best before the launches even occur. And those are the types of things that our access, the access the Department of Transportation oversees, that's kind of where I sit in that area, where we look at the guidelines as proposed and the approaches and turn those into meaningful regulations so that we can actually do something. I mean, the Space Priorities Framework captures it well when it says, we are on the cusp of a historic era in space. We have not seen the likes of this ever. Access and use of space are only expected to dramatically increase. And so it's going to take a concerted and coordinated effort to ensure the preservation of the space environment. And I believe the United States as a whole of government is committed to that approach. It will be very, very, very difficult to go it alone, if not impossible. This is going to take a very robust and coordinated, but I'm encouraged by the direction I hear, most importantly, that a recognition that space traffic coordination or space traffic management or basically safety services in orbit are a must, and robust services are needed, and that space debris is an issue that is only growing, and if we cannot tackle it today, it will overwhelm us tomorrow. And so I'm very encouraged by what I hear, and I'm from my small perspective, overseeing the most prolific launch operators in the world. We are committed to the safety and the preservation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And listen, I would love to send you some sun over, but I do have to say we are currently in Belgium. And as with most of Northern Europe, there isn't much sun here to send anywhere. And but yeah, so I hope you actually get more sun than us when day dawns in your part of the world. So I think, first of all, I think we're all very, very happy to hear, and maybe not too surprised to hear that we all agree that solving the space debris issue is of key importance, and doing so internationally is also of key importance. But maybe how do we, because we've heard of national initiatives, we've heard of some sort of regional attempts or initiatives or beginnings of initiatives, and some of the things that are happening at an international level. How do we coordinate all of this? How do we avoid duplication? How do we make sure that our approach is coherent and consistent? How do these national, regional, and international measures sort of relate to each other? Maybe Mr. Morel.
Well, I think you have heard what was already said. It is obvious that our security depends upon each individual action. I mean, the security of all depends of the action of each. And therefore, international cooperation is really essential. As an agency, as ESA, we are international organization. We don't have any possibility to push legislation or rules. What we can do are twofold. Certainly, our own behaviors in order to, as I already said, to have the best possible behaviors of the agency itself. And of course, what we do is to support the European Union, the Commission, and also all our member states in their efforts, in their national legislation, and also in all the international forum where we are acting as observers and using our knowledge, because I think what is important is a good exchange between the legislator, if you want, and the space agency, because we have the practical knowledge, but we don't have the capacity to push legislation, and therefore what is important is this dialogue, and I would say, and I'm very happy about that, in Europe this dialogue is going very well, I think.
And I want to give the floor to you, Ms. Eindhoven, because I know, of course, that the European Commission is now, and of course with the External Action Service, developing this European approach to STM. How is that going to figure in with everything that's happening at a national level and at an international level?
Well, of course, I mean, space is global, and ideally we would come with something which will cover the whole world, which is of course not possible. But we are committed, as we know, via the External Action Service with multilateralism. So we do, of course, want to actually support that approach. And we have the discussions in COPIOS, the Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space, but also the Conference of Disarmament is very important in this respect. Now, there are a few countries in the world that can credibly deploy a globally performing SST system capable of really processing the necessary services to perform STM. So, but forging partnerships now and sharing, but it's very much sharing the STM burden through complementary capabilities and norms should therefore be a very practical solution for the time being, and which will be then also in everyone's interest. But of course, I mean, STM builds on the confidence among spacefaring nations and requires redundant systems. So the regional approach is a pragmatic, bottom-up approach, and to build this confidence and to ensure the necessary redundancy. And once these regional systems or components of STM are mature enough and actually sufficiently convergent, as Karine also already mentioned, and there is sufficient consensus and on the various rules and standards, then the STM regional components could then actually be part of a more global STM with an appropriate governance, which still needs to be determined, of course. So the development of the EU approach on STM, which we do with the Commission together with the External Action Service, is very much the first step of a more general process. And to this end, it is necessary to promote the concept of a multilateral approach, which is absolutely the UN, with our external partners.
So I want to maybe give the floor to if any of our international friends and colleagues would like to pitch in on the notion on how we coordinate between. I mean, is it a purely international approach that we need to be taking? Should we go first via a regional approach and then an international approach? I don't know if anybody would like to pitch in on the matter. Please.
Yeah, if you allow me. Yeah,
please, sir.
This is Tidjane Ouattara. If you allow me, since I have to leave soon.
Indeed, please.
From the African perspective, I would say it is very clear for us that cooperation and international relations are very key. Why? Because Africa is made up of 55 countries. Yeah. Therefore, the necessity to collaborate, to coordinate the businesses are more than critical. And this happens at three levels. First of all, at the regional level, national level and regional level, which is, and you can see that in Africa, that we have some regional organizations that are developing the space policy. ECOWAS for Western African countries, where you have 15 countries, and the SADC region, where they are developing their space policy. At the continental level, this is why the African countries, the head of the African Space Agency, which will be hosted by Egypt, And one of the key roles of the African Space Agency at the governance level is to coordinate the space programs and policy among the 55 countries. And the third level is the collaboration between Africa and other continents. In this case, I would like to take the opportunity to thank the European Union for the long-standing cooperation African Union and European Union have. And one of the concrete examples is the GMS in Africa, Global Monitoring for Environment and Security in Africa, where more than 125 African institutions coming from different countries, 45 countries, are working together. Space is a common tool. We have to be able, at the programmatic level, to consolidate, to consult, and to cooperate on the data and infrastructure, because accessing data, accessing infrastructure for Africa is critical. Secondly, we should be able to share knowledge for the service development. And for that one, the third pillar we are considering in Africa is the training. The African population is very young. 60% of the population is young. And Africa is coming to the space arena as a new player, relatively. Therefore, we need to train, I would say, a critical human, resources that will allow Africa to really be a key player in the space community. And the fourth one is to create awareness and outreach. Why awareness? The decision makers and policy makers should be informed on the strengths and what space can provide them as input, as tools that will allow the decision to manage their policy issues, to address the natural resources exploration, etc. You see, the international cooperation is critical for Africa because it allows others to share with Africa because they've been there for a while, but others also to validate using the institute data, using the African context, because Africa is offering, and we can come to that, a kind of landscape where space can demonstrate and continue demonstrating its usefulness. This is what I would say for now. The international relations, as one of the panelists, space alone. Any continent cannot afford space alone. It is a common resource. It is also, by its nature, so fragmented that you cannot afford it alone. But therefore, let us talk together. Let us act together. Let us looking at the future, the brilliant future of space together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ouattara. Definitely noted access to data infrastructure, knowledge sharing, training, and sort of awareness of the importance of these issues vis-a-vis the policymakers. I definitely have to say also, sometimes in Europe we complain about how difficult it is to coordinate between 27 member states. You have an absolutely daunting task in Africa. So much courage, much success to you also on that front. Maybe some of our other international colleagues would like to pitch in on. I can see Mr. Ishii from JAXA would like to speak on the matter. Please, sir.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to introduce some our effort concerning to this international dialogues in the Asia-Pacific region. JAXA has been operating the Asia-Pacific Region Space Agency Forum since 1993. With the aim of promoting international cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. And international organizations, private companies, universities, as well as research institutes in more than 40 countries and regions have participated to date. APR SAF has become an effective platform for promoting international dialogue in the Asia-Pacific region in space. During the panel session on the theme of practices for sustainable use of outer space at APR SAF 27 that was held last year, speakers from the government, space agencies, academic societies, and industries, including Professor Aoki, the chairperson of the legal subcommittee of COPUS, and Mr. Uma Maheshwaran, who is the scientific secretary of ISRO and the chairperson of LTS-2 working group of COPUS, were invited to discuss the approach to the issue of space debris. The view was shared that it is important to promote rulemaking related to space debris from the perspective of ensuring the responsible activities of private companies and future promoting commercial activities. The joint statement of APR SAF 27 states, APR SAF confirmed that the forum should continue to discuss global policy issues such as the long-term sustainability of space activities and responses to climate change as a region, and aim to contribute to the discussion on international norms and rules. We believe that APR SAF has contributed to fostering a common recognition throughout the Asia-Pacific region on the important issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe one of our other international colleagues would also like to speak on the matter, on the importance of regional vis-a-vis, I think Mr. Gudov, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I would like to notice and saying, like Ms. Clay said, that there is two different definitions, like freedom of space and freedom access to space. In our point of view, there is no such wording like freedom of actions in international treaties related to space activities. And that's why we are trying to say that those freedom of actions should be limited, then it could violate the equal rights of another space actor. And I agree with Ms. Eindhoven saying that not only COPUS, but Conference on Disarmament is very important international fora, because space debris certainly it's a very important issue that could serve for safety of space operations. But the main question is preserve the space for peaceful uses. So that's why we intend on preventing in armed space, in outer space, because in that case, talking about the peaceful use for the space will be useless. That's why then we are talking about the most important issue. We say the most important issue is finding that transparency and confidence building measures and establish some special principle and rules for different space activities, because due to new technologies, due to increasing number of space actors and space activities, we need some additional regulation. Sometimes it could be guidelines, sometimes it could be rules or principles, but for such space activities like space resources, exploration and utilization, I mean, it's not only mineral resources, because in our point of view, space resources not limited by what kind of minerals. It could be a different resources like energy, like territories of surface in different space bodies and so on. And in that case, we need maybe new space treaties, international space treaties establishing the legally binding obligations for all space actors. And I agree with Mr. Yutaro that those questions should be related on the international level, that not only space powers should be involved in discussion of possible approaches and possible solutions of such issues, that all states all around the world should be involved in that process of discussions, making proposals. But the only condition and the only view I have in that case, that such proposals and such solutions could be reasonable. It's not enough saying that I think that in that way it could be better or could be more effective. You should prove that approach, you should say and making some maybe experiments or based on your experience and best practices. So that's why we usually welcome all proposals, and we are ready to discuss on different platforms, on different levels, those issues like space debris mitigation and remediation, traffic management. Certainly, we need to establish some new international regime. And the only questions to our colleagues that your proposals or your maybe some objections to proposals from different countries should be reasonable. Thank you very much, and I expect we could continue our discussion.
Thank you very much. No, very interesting points, very important points on the importance, of course, of transparency and confidence. Reasonable proposals, as you said, and a mention of potential new space treaties. I want to give the floor to Ms. Kleis here. I'm not sure if you have any reaction on what's been said by our panelists so far on this matter, but also I'm quite curious to hear your point on, because you deal directly with the sort of multilateral international level. Maybe how do you see that vis-a-vis the regional sort of initiatives that are currently taking place? How do you see the dynamic there?
Thank you, George, and thank you for the various interventions. I mean, I hear from those various interventions, in fact, a willingness to at a certain moment converge. And I think that that is the most important message that we can bring to the audience and to the multilateral dimension. Need to converge at international level, of course, at multilateral level, but not only. Also the need to converge between the actual actors, meaning the space operators, the space agencies, and the rulers, the regulators, the governments, the international organization with the regulating power. They do not start from the same starting point. Yes, they do start from the same they see the same situation. Sure. Both the environment, both communities see the need to act, but their tools are different. Sure. Space operators, space agencies can work on common standards, the way they could exchange information among themselves, good practices, things that are coming from bottom and Indeed. Go up. And this is very, very useful, because it is on that we will build the practice and be able to think about possible regulatory activities. And then you have the other side of the coin, more top-down, which comes from the governmental actors, the multilateral scene, where they're building on that practice that has happened, on what we notice is the practice. We can then go to what we've done in COPIOS, to guidelines, in order to put that in documents that are adopted by the multilateral sphere, and that at a later stage could become a real legally binding instrument. Sure. But according to us, the first step, the more practical first step, is to start with guidelines, with a non-legally binding instrument, although the final step, when we have converged, could be a legally binding instrument. But there needs to be convergence both between the actors I would say, on the ground, but it's not really on the ground, it's over there. and the regulators,
Indeed.
one kind of convergence, and then the convergence between the various actors.
Indeed.
And let me take one example. Our space actors, like the Space Agency, are speaking about new projects they have with new technologies in order to meet the challenge of so many space objects that have become debris still over there that would better not stay in orbit. This is very interesting, of course. It is a way to clean, to lower the pollution in orbit. But it is also very worrying, and it could lead to misperception and to threatening or to perception that there could be a threat coming from that. Because if you can take a satellite and bring it back to Earth, you can do that, of course, with your own satellite that is not anymore operational and that you want to diminish and reduce the pollution. But you could possibly do that also with the satellite of someone you don't really like.
Sure. Yeah.
And so there absolutely needs to be transparency and confidence building measure linked to that. The operators should be very, very transparent on those new technologies and what they want to do with that. And this is part of a global atmosphere. This is the kind of thing that we can discuss with transparency and confidence building measures, both in Vienna on the peaceful use of outer space, but also, of course, in Geneva, in the Disarmament Forum, in order to make sure that that kind of technology is not threatening for others. And we very much think that an approach based on behaviors is a reasonable way forward. However, and our Russian colleagues did notice that, when the proposals by parties with whom we are not entirely in line do propose reasonable measures also, like the way forward with the resolution 230 that has been introduced by the Russian Federation on additional measures to avoid an arms race in outer space. We are totally ready to go alongside that path also to contribute to the multilateral work. And this, I think, is important, that we discuss on reasonable measures in order to allow the space environment to remain a space for safe, for secure, and for sustainable use.
Excellent, and I think I like the fact, we've spoken about convergence, and I like the fact that there seems to be here a convergence of the idea that we need to have sort of transparency and confidence in order to move forward in this domain together, and in order to maybe one day, as you mentioned, have actual binding rules in the domain. Mr. Stephen Earle, what are your thoughts on the matter?
So I think one of the things in this area of policy that we're working on, no one can argue that transparency and competence building measures are not beneficial and useful in those areas. And the work that we put together in COPUOS, but I would also like to say that we have to recognize some of the complexity of this issue. I know that I'm often asked, for a simple or a straight or a single answer to some of the policy issues that we have. And when we look at the Outer Space Treaty with 17 articles, But then when you look at the long-term sustainability, it was like 39 different guidelines. It's getting more complicated. We don't handle the same issues in geostationary that we handle around position, navigation, and timing in NEO that we have in low Earth orbit. All three of those have different forcing functions and different issues. And so the complexity of the space environment means that I think the complexity in the policy issues that we have needs to be as mature. And it can't be just one-sided or a single approach, in my opinion. I mean, we work very well, the United States works well in UN COPUOS and other UN fora. But I also would like to say that we get great value out of the expert exchanges at the international level, like the Interagency Debris Coordinating Committee. And I think that those expert levels that provide the information that is useful for policymakers and for policy discussions, that we should be there. I think all of those are very, very important. But for me, I would like to say just that, yes, it's the complexity of the issue that really drives more than one approach. And I don't think there's a simple unilateral binding approach that we could have. And I think that we recognize that when we develop norms and best practices and standards. And I would also ask that before we can actually move even beyond the norms and best practices, we have to look at actually, are we even meeting those norms? I mean, do we have today an environment where we know what to do, but we're still not doing it? And so it's a little difficult to move to new norms that go even beyond that when we're talking about actually implementing the activities that we currently have, like the long-term sustainability. And I'm excited to get to the implementation of the long-term sustainability guidelines. And then once that's in place, and we can really move to a meaningful next level on those areas. But this is a very complicated, and for us, it's a whole of government approach in the United States, because it takes into account the equities of all of the different areas. And in my area is legislative authority is simply the launch and reentry safety. And so I focus far more on the safety aspects than I do on the security aspects on that area. So my opinion might be a little biased towards the safety and sustainability of space.
Thank you very much for reminding us of, yes, indeed, the complexity of the issue and the multitude of approaches that would need to be taken to really resolve this. Now, I'm aware, I'm being made aware by the clock in front of me on this little screen that, that time is indeed running short, and I have so many more questions I could ask, and we have also questions in the chat coming in. I have one very technical, I think, well, very technical for me, because I'm not sort of really in depth in the technical matters here, but on also how we can maybe sort of take into account electromagnetic pollution and so on and so forth in this discussion. Please do continue the debate either on the chat as well or on Twitter. I have been asked to remind you to tweet. For those of you who are media savvy, do tweet with the hashtag BBE SpaceConf. But what I'm going to do, seeing as we don't have that much time left, I'm going to give everyone who would like to have a minute for some concluding remarks to do so. Mr. Morel.
Yes. I think we have heard and like very much this image of bottom-up and top-down. Mm-hmm. But for bottom-up and top-down to work together, you need one thing in between, which is dialogue and exchange. And that is absolutely essential. And I think in Europe, as you said, we have a number of countries, but what is important is that this dialogue between those that are, as you said, on the field, not in the field, but that are operating the satellite on a daily basis, and those that are the one establishing the rules and the legislation, you need to have this dialogue, and this dialogue is absolutely essential. Dialogue and transparency. I think also what is important is to try to draw lessons of what we see around us. For example, the international aviation world. There also you see the importance of reference, commonly accepted reference, the importance of prediction, importance of verification, also the importance of standards and norms, and also I really plea for, maybe that will be my conclusion, let's reduce the debris we are creating. I think this is absolutely essential.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to have a minute to give some final remarks? If any of our international partners would like to, you can raise your hand or just start speaking. Either way would work. We're all shy this morning. That's fine. That's okay. Well, listen. I will. In that case, would you like to please?
Maybe just a word, and I would come back with what I said initially. International cooperation is key. And international cooperation, so between space operators, space agencies, international cooperation between nations, not only spacefaring nations, but all nations,
Indeed.
because outer space is a resource for now, but also for future generations, meaning for the entire world. Everyone on Earth can benefit from space applications. And so everyone on Earth has a right to be represented in those discussions to preserve the outer space for future generations.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Please,
maybe
Mr.
last,
Van Eyck.
and I think the complexity has been raised already.
Indeed.
I think what we see also from the European Union point of view is the fact that we try to, of course, bring together on the one hand the economic activities, but on the other hand, per definition, the assets are, of course, also defense related, and therefore the military is also involved, which brings a reality of dependence versus the fear of vulnerability. But I think from our perspective, the importance is indeed to really build a long and trusted legacy of advancing with building trust and confidence. And I think this is what we need to do in the international scene.
Thank you very much. Well, if no one else... I think Mr. Gudov would like to take the floor. Please, sir.
Thank you very much. I agree with our colleagues. It's that international cooperation, it's a very important instrument to exchange views and solving such issues as transparent and consistent building measures. But I would like to notice that very important not only to talk to each other and to listen to each other, it's more important to hear each other and not reading between the rows, but exactly what in the text is put down. Thank you very much.
Indeed, let us listen to and hear each other. That's I think a nice message to certainly end on. If none of our other international friends and partners and colleagues would like to say a few words, then it is no. I don't see anyone. It's a time difference. I'm telling you, it's because. No, well, listen. Then it's up to me to conclude. Thank you very, very much for everyone here and everyone who has joined us from afar. Thank you very much. I do hope to be able to welcome you physically, hopefully, to our conference next year. Thank you to what was for what was an absolutely fascinating discussion. Very much sort of the tip of the iceberg. There's certainly a lot of work still to be done, but I think there was some convergence here already with regards to our points of view. So we are definitely, I think, hopeful. So once again, thank you very, very much. I hope, Mr. Stephen Earle, that you can now get some rest. Go and sleep. And yes, so thank you very, very much. And we will be back shortly. And a round of applause from the people here and from the people at home for our panelists. Thank you very much.
Okay, we are live. So, hey, Space Watchers. Hello, guys from the Technic. We have a terrible echo here, at least I have. It sounds not cool. However, we talk about over the echo. So, hey, Space Watchers online here in the audience, or dear panelists and distinguished guests here in Brussels in the wonderful Egmont Palace. It's my pleasure to welcome you here and at the panel number 12 already, so we're almost done with a conference about exploration and more concrete, exploration future missions to Moon and Mars. I know that will limit us in exploration, in our explorational thoughts, but let's start. Step by step, we will do that. And for that panel, I have a wonderful mix of ESA industry, new space companies on this panel. My name is Thorsten Kriening. I'm the publisher and CEO of SpaceWatch.Global and host here for the next 75 minutes. SpaceWatch Global is a Europe-based independent online magazine for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and daily newsletters, and the Space Cafe, web talks, podcasts, and radio formats. And on that note, I promised that I would like to shoot out to the SpaceWatch Global team online that is covering and reporting about these events and all the cool panels that we have here. Thank you, Emma, Victoria, Rika, and Marcos. So, back to the show. On our panel today, I would like to welcome David Parker, the Director of Human and Robotic Exploration at ESA, Laura Todd, it's not in this order here that I have, Laura Todd, the Vice President of Exploration, Airbus Defence and Space, Elaine Ubi, I hope I pronounce it so far so good, founder and CEO of The Exploration Company, Jean-Luc Maria, the CEO of ExoTrail, and as you can see, also not in the announcement, as an addition, Dr. Lutz Bertling, the CSDO, you can say what it is later on, of OHB. In this session, we will go directly into a dialogue. I also like to encourage the panelists to be interactive. Even we do have a quite relaxed panel with our 75 minutes. I do have my tool of power with me, just to show it once that I have it. Oh, no, it makes a noise that will remind you of the time that you keep your answer short and crisp. So, let's kick it off in our first round. We would like to hear from you about your view on exploration, and I'm aware that 4 minutes for that, or 3 minutes, will be very brutal, but try it. So, David, what is ESA's vision for space exploration, and what are the benefits for Europe, as this is a European conference?
Great, thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for the invitation to come and speak here. Well, how to say in 4 minutes why exploration is important. I always say that exploration, within all of the space activities that we do, and they're all important, is quite unique because it's about curiosity and opportunity. It's the curiosity to venture out into the unknown, and the opportunity to bring back experiences, results, knowledge, capabilities that you only get by venturing out into unknown locations with our humans and our robots. And I've always emphasized it's the combination of humans and robots that really matters. Why do it then? Well, I always go back, and nobody ever reads it, but to the Global Exploration Strategy, the original framework document of 2007, which was 14 space agencies and dozens of people thinking about what does exploration mean. And you can boil it down to 4 things, which are embedded in ESA's exploration program. First of all, it's new knowledge, so whether that's scientific knowledge, the understanding of our universe, the search for the origins of life, using space as a place to understand our solar system, to understand even our planet. So there's the fundamental knowledge, but there's also the understanding of how to do difficult things, and exploration is about doing difficult things, trying to do things for the first time, so the technical capabilities you create. The second element is the economic. Space exploration has an economic impact. We know when we invest €1 in space exploration, it generates 2 or 3 euros of economic activity. And if you think about the tax raised by that economic activity, basically it pays for itself straight away. So every euro invested comes back into the exchequers and finance ministries around Europe. Why does that happen? Because it creates activities in industry, it creates knowledge and skills that are used elsewhere. But I said industry, and it doesn't just mean the space industry, it also means all sorts of other industries. Developing new life support system technologies and recycling for the circular economy, the green economy, is something we do in space exploration. And technologies developed for space resources and for recycling technologies are already being used here on Earth. We're in Belgium, so there's a Belgian brewery that uses technologies developed in the space exploration program to make Belgian beer even better, if that's possible. So bringing technologies back to
Are you
Earth.
talking about space beer from Belgium?
Why not? No, but the technologies are used down on Earth. Every day it's used in disaster relief, recycling technologies, purification technologies that we developed for space exploration. There was even, at the end of last year, end of 2020, an investigation into a COVID medication that went aboard the space station and came back again. So second reason. Third reason, quickly, international cooperation. Everything we do is international cooperation. We work with partners all around the world. And in the ever more important in these difficult times, that international cooperation is really crucial. And then the fourth reason is the reason probably why all of us are involved in exploration, which is it's very, very exciting. It's really cool, it's inspirational. I'm so old that I remember the Apollo moon landings. I'm so old that I built an Airfix kit of an Apollo moon lander when I was 8 years old. But just look at the 22,000 people that applied for the astronauts, 23,000 applied for our astronaut selection this year. It's obvious that space is still inspiring to the next generation who want to be part of it. And I think we should really talk about the people in space exploration this morning as well.
We will, after the introduction round. But let's give the others also a chance to speak. So, Laura, Airbus and exploration. Tell us more about that. And I'm also keen to learn about this robotic facility, human exploration thing. That sounds super cool. Yeah.
So good morning to everyone, and thank you, Dave, for the excellent answer. So I would piggyback on what Dave said, exactly why space exploration is important. For Airbus in particular, we're truly a global company that has a European heart. Because I come back to what you asked about why it's important for Europe. And when I look at what does that mean to have a European heart, it means that we've got 130,000 employees, over 100 nationalities, and we take those differences and perspective, that creativity, the culture, and we put it together to really drive innovation and to come up with, and it's a bit of a cliche, but simple solutions to complex problems. And that in itself is an inspiring goal. And so in Airbus, we are truly committed to further developing that human experience in space. And I think this is important, and we'll come back to it later, I hope, of how we make it tangible for the everyday person. But I have the benefit that in Airbus, I work with so many talented engineers, so many talented individuals, and we have this common goal to drive those next steps. And if you talk about robotics in general, I did an R&D review just this week on Monday, and I was just astonished at all the different technologies that we're building. And I think when we look at space exploration, again, we like to look at the big picture in Airbus. And what are those individual capabilities and elements that enable that end human experience? And I think we get focused a little bit too much sometimes on the more visual things, the big launches, human capsules. But we have over 12,000 direct suppliers in Airbus. So all these different component parts are important. And if we take robotics, it is the foundation, it's the pathway that's going to lead eventually to a safer, more productive human presence in space. But at the same time, it's going to be complementary afterwards. We're not just going to put humans and they're going to be doing things on their own. And so when I look at some of the topics we talk about in robotics and how that advances our technology and pushing those boundaries. So whatever we've done in rovers, every time the next generation, it's even going better into how do we do thermal performance, how do we do power management, trying to make it more agile in the way that we build it so that we don't start from scratch every time and we make it a more efficient system. Looking at what we're doing with moon dust, you know, converting it into usable resources on the moon in situ. I could go on in terms of a list, so I won't bore everyone. The 3D printing, metal printing, the opportunity to do resource management using existing debris, if we can say it like that, or material that's in space. So there's all these topics that we can use, and I will stop there and come back to you afterwards.
I just take it in my hand. So I
I
didn't say anything.
I'm watching.
But one thing, this robotic assistant or robotic human assistant system, however you want to call it, is it something like a Siri with legs and arms, or how can I envision that? Just briefly.
I think we need to break it down into I watched a demo, for example, of a robotic arm.
Okay.
Operated on different sites, so different nationalities, to assemble a simple structure, but they did it. You know, and these are the kind of things that we can be looking at, and it will get more complex. We're not yet at the era of full Android.
Hélène, over to you. Tell us about the exploration company. I mean, you have exploration in the name already, and would you like to give us some outlook for the next 10, 15, 20 years, where we are going, in your opinion?
So, I mean, the reason why we created the exploration company is that we believe that space exploration is going to be one of the very, very important next step for humanity. As, for example, the internet has completely changed the way we live. We believe one of the very next important steps for humanity is space exploration. And why that? Because we are at a point when we step-by-step master the key technologies to make the space exploration sustainable. And if we draw the parallel with the 15th, 16th century, at a certain point in time, Chinese, Europe, also others started to explore the world because they had the right technologies. And we believe that we are exactly at this turning point when the key technologies which enable sustainable space exploration, that is to say, reusability of vehicle, refillability of vehicle, and the capacity to use space resources to refill this vehicle, they are coming to a point of maturity. And not only these technologies which enable to have a vehicle which is like our car, so it means it does not cost billions, but step by step it will cost less, but also the capability to carry humans, because there is no exploration without humans. So given this, let's say, context, we said, okay, we have to be part of that. And the reason why we created a company is to say, let's participate to this endeavor and let's try to do it with an accelerated speed, with a very ambitious technological level, because at the end of the day, what we want to build is a spacecraft which is reusable, refillable, and can be refilled with propellant that can be produced in orbit. And let's do it in an open manner. That is to say, our technobricks are going to have open interfaces so that other companies not coming from the space industries can connect with our technologies and leverage them. Because the space exploration will be with humans, for sure, but also with non-space companies, building on the shoulders of the space companies. So that's the reason why we created the exploration company. Of course, this is a very bold ambition. We are an experienced team, so we go step by step. We de-risk one technology, we open a market, then we de-risk a second technology, we open a second market. We will start with cargo, we'll start with low Earth orbit, then we carry humans, then we go to the moons, so that's more or less the roadmap. But the purpose is to be one of the strong participants to this very important endeavor with European DNAs and with this openness to non-space companies.
Okay, thank you very much. Jean-Luc, ExoTrail and exploration, I mean, at least for me, that does not ring a bell. Maybe you can enlighten me and the rest of the audience as well about your company and your background, what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so thanks, Thorsten, and hello, everyone. So let me try to explain why Exotrail is here today, together with Helen. So I'm very happy to be there today, mainly for two reasons. The first one is that before to create Exotrail, I was working for the CNRS in France, which is the French National Research Center. And I was a research engineer involved in exploration mission from ESA. So I had, let's say, a great chance to participate on Mars Express, Venus Express, Bepi Colombo. And during these years, in fact, what I discovered is that it was a traditional approach to do exploration. So pure institutional projects with maybe a decade or more to develop the hardware at an amazing cost, with no risk, and with a schedule always pushed away. So 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I decided to create Exotrail because I understood that it was maybe possible to do space on a different manner, and in some way also exploration, because it was my original DNA, in fact. So at Exotrail, what we are doing is that we are an end-to-end space mobility operator, because we are convinced that in all the space topics today, there is, let's say, the arrival of a new mobility value chain, from the beginning of your space project up to the end, around the moon, around the Earth, around Mars, why not? And when I speak about mobility at Exotrail, I speak about different use cases. It can be post-launch deployment, it can be orbital maintenance, end-of-life management, debris removal, inspection also, infrastructure deployment. Infrastructure is also a key point around Earth and maybe in a close future around Moon. But mobility is also exploration. When we speak about exploration, we will need mobility. And so we are developing lots of products addressing this whole mobility value chain. So thrusters, mission design software, space tugs, operation softwares, also to predict the maneuver you need to do. And so I think it's important today, and I'm here to try to put a bit of new space into this exploration topic, because I'm personally convinced that the new space approach could be very useful to potentially accelerate and innovate into this exploration world, which is up to now a real traditional world.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm quite sure we will come to this point and a bit later, because it's super interesting. Lutz, over to you. Can you tell us a bit about OHB is doing on the exploration side, and how does that fit into this global/European picture?
Yes, of course, and actually you could have said a bit the same to me like to Exotrail, because OHB today is not the biggest player in exploration, to be honest. But I strongly believe in actually what Dave said. It's about curiosity, it's about inspiration, and it's a driver for innovation. And in reality, particularly the moon has always been our focus. Not many people know that in 2014 we flew a commercial, today we would say new space mission, to lunar orbit, just out of curiosity, honestly. It was not about making money, but about curiosity. And we want to rebuild on this. We strongly believe that the 30s will be the decade of exploration. I share the opinion that many ingredients are there now, that there's really a big step ahead of us. It starts now. The 30s will be a totally different story than today. And clearly OHB intends to be part of this story, with certain missions, with a certain focus on the moon, with a certain focus on Venus as well. We have been in Mars missions, we have been in lunar missions, but of course, compared to the colleagues from Airbus, we are a tiny player, to be honest.
You're welcome.
We intend to change this because of this combination of driver for innovation and, inspirational curiosity, cross the borders, discover new worlds. And I would share as well that exploration brings lots of benefit for applications on Earth. To mention one, we have a project for even the specialized company, a subsidiary, for decertification. So we are going to Burkina Faso, Morocco, Jordania, and so on, for decertification. And this is pure technology which comes out of exploration. This is how to create algae, which are originally were foreseen to transform regolith in something where you can grow plants on. The real application will not be on the moon, at least not for now. It will be on Earth, and it will help a lot. We have square kilometers in preparations now. It will help a lot for decertification on Earth. So I share what Dave actually said. It brings lots of benefit back to Earth.
Thank you very much for this first round. I mean, it seems that you're all doing your bit in exploration, but are you working together? I mean, you're all Europeans, you're all European companies. Are you working together already, or is it just a wild dream of me?
Well, so we created the European Exploration Programme in 2016. Historically, there was a human spaceflight program. There was astronauts going to the space station, Columbus, all of that. And that is continuing, and that's the bedrock of the program. And separately, there was created a Mars exploration program. When I came on the scene, the whole point was to see exploration as a journey, as a continuous journey, in which what we're doing is transforming destinations from being exploration destinations to places where we live and work. And we've done that now with low Earth orbit. You know, if you have kids that are 21 years old, their entire lives there have been people living and working above their heads. So low Earth orbit is now a place where we live and work. And now, therefore, now's the time to hand that off to become a commercial destination where ESA is just one of many customers, many users of low Earth orbit. And that's bringing in all sorts of companies. So we have 3 commercial services aboard our module, Columbus now, the space station, where they've not been built by us, they've been proposed and developed by private industry. Companies like this, we're talking about here, but other ones. So it's happened now. So it's a diverse community. The same thing is starting to happen with the moon. So we now have our first commercial service for lunar exploration with commercial telecommunications. So somebody is building a satellite, happens to be SSTL, to go to the moon, provide services to the world, and I'm just buying those services. I'm not building the spacecraft, I'm buying the communication services, and I'm actually bartering those with NASA. So we're offering something to the world. So we are absolutely open to new models and new ways of working, because we're starting to do
I never thought about ESA being in this position as a dealer, so... But it sounds cool, so it sounds exciting.
Absolutely,
yeah.
we're enabling businesses to happen.
My concrete question, are you guys working together already as a European force?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool, yeah, that's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
It can be, life can be that easy. So, move on. The next round, I would like to focus more on the future, the current state of space exploration, where we are. What are the next steps? So if you tune your questions into that direction, that would be wonderful. Again, 4 minutes are fine. We are still good on track. Helen, I would like to start with you. What are the key technologies or that locks, or how does the key technology look like to make space exploration as simple as traveling on Earth? And I like this thought.
So speaking about the next steps, I think if we look down the road, the 10 years which are coming are really the years of commercialization of low Earth orbit and exploration of the moon. Commercialization of low Earth orbit because, you have 3 projects of private space stations. China is going to have its own space station. India has also the project to have a space station by the end of the decade. And we have the ISS. Nobody, for the time being, at least to my knowledge, knows how to bring it down. So it may be that at the end of the decade also the ISS will still be there, even if it's not the plan for the time being. And Europe has also projects, at least there is this RFI, to see how Europe could have a complete ecosystem that would serve European needs, but also other needs. And what we see in this low Earth orbit area is that on the one hand, you have more and more private business which are enabled. This is true for microgravity experiment. If you come to a price point which is very low, if you come to a recurrency which is very high, you fit within the time and within the budget of industrial research, and then probably you unleash something new. You can see that you have startups companies like Varda Space Industries, which wants to manufacture in space. Companies also like Inversion, which is a kind of competitor to us, which provide a capsule at a very low cost, etc. So things are happening, and it's not just company popping here and there. It's money from the best venture funds which are being invested in these companies. To take the example of Varda Industry, it's backed by Founders Fund, which was one of the best American VCs. It's backed also by Lux Capital, etc. So there is a push on this commercialization of the low Earth orbit. Of course, there is part of that is space tourism, it's advertisement, it's product placement, etc. We can think whatever we want about that. If we look back, in the years about aviation, if you look back about the cars, we would be in the 19th century, we would have buy a car, everybody say, this is so like just for wealthy people, and what's the point of that? And same at the beginning when the first tourists, took the first airplane. So I think we have to take a little bit of distance and see also what this tourism brings in terms of technology and safety, and how space tourism aviation tourism completely transformed the aviation industry to bring a lot of safety. So step number one is the commercialization of the low Earth orbit. And within this decade also exploration of the moon, with probably 1-2 stations. That's currently the plan with the Lunar Gateway, of course, and with the Chinese-Russian lunar station. And really understanding how we could potentially transform the moon into, on the one hand, a test place, because whatever can be tested on the moon in the very harsh conditions then can be scaled on Mars probably, and also a logistic hub. Because of propellant and because if you don't have to come back to Earth every time, you want to have a logistic place where you can refuel, where we can repair, and then fly again. It's way more efficient, and then it means it's also the cost will go down. So I will stop.
Just from my understanding, I know you can keep on going, but from my understanding, are you talking about your own station?
No.
Or somebody else's station in a wider context and use it?
So I was just describing the landscape of what could be low Earth orbit by the end of the decade, and let's say the moon by the end of the decade. And what I was saying is that this decade is really, I think, about the commercialization of the low Earth orbit and the exploration of the moon. And if this is successful, I believe we'll enter into a next decade, so 30, 40, which will be about Mars. That's more or less the landscape.
You're talking about human exploration.
I'm talking about human exploration.
Yes. Obviously, Mars exploration is happening now. It's going to happen with the robots.
This is clear. I'm just talking about human exploration.
But this is the point, that the robots are like the precursors. They're pathfinders that go before the humans. And then they will be supporting the humans.
Keep on going. I mean, what are the other current projects on space exploration to Mars and Moon? I mean, and also, can you compare them to the rest of the world? I mean,
with pleasure. Yeah, I mean, as I say, we've only had an exploration program since 2016, and trying to build this overall roadmap is exactly what we've been doing. So, where are we now? Well, with a matter of weeks away, the first SLS rocket is in the vertical assembly building Kennedy. If it's the biggest rocket that's been launched since 1972, and if you go and see it, on the top of it, there's an ESA logo. So there's an ESA logo on the biggest rocket that's been launched since 1972, because we're building the European service modules. The power and propulsion for Orion, our new crew vehicle to take us to the moon, forward to the moon. And Helena knows because she was involved in that project in a previous life. This is an uncrewed test flight. In 2 years' time, we do the first crewed flight round the moon, further into deep space than humans have ever gone, using European power and propulsion, the second service module. That's been delivered last year. We're building number 3. We've got numbers 4, 5, and 6 under contract. And maybe we'll talk to Airbus about 7, 8, and 9 shortly. We shall see. So we're flying into deep space. Where we're going to fly to? We're going to fly to our humanities outpost in deep space, our mini space station around the moon, the Gateway. Think of it as like an Antarctic research station. It's the most distant outpost of humanity. It's the first settlement on another world. The moon is the 8th continent of the Earth. So Gateway, it has 3 habitation modules. 2 of those are being built in Europe right now. Metal is being cut. So we are building that right now, and European industry all across Europe is working on that. It's the stepping stone for reaching down to the surface of the moon. We need transportation. Helen's been talking mostly about transportation. So the next step is our lunar Amazon delivery truck, the European Large Lander, which will deliver 1.5 tons of payload to the surface of the moon. It could be logistics, it could be cargo, it could be science, it could be space resources. We don't really care. It's our delivery van that we can contribute to the global exploration plans of the moon throughout the 2030s. It's the big decision point we'll bring to the ministerial at the end of this year. We're inevitably always talking about the Council of Ministers. It's the key new project that's on the table. Do we want to have an autonomous capability in Europe to be part of this lunar exploration? and enable the things that we do when we get there. Because we talk about transportation a lot, but what really interests me is what we do when we get to the moon. What are we going to do there? Why are we going? That's another whole discussion point.
Okay.
Mars exploration, well, we're on our way with ExoMars 2022 this year. The rover, Rosalind Franklin, has just finished its tests. We've done the parachute tests. I'm keeping a weather eye on the politics because we go to the launch pad in April for launch in September. And meanwhile, we're working on what for me is the ultimate robotic exploration mission that's actually approved so far, which is to go to Mars and come back again. Mm-hmm. Exploration is about going and coming back again. And so with Mars Sample Return, Europe has partnered with NASA to do this extraordinarily complicated multi-mission campaign of robotic exploration of the red planet.
How do you launch that with?
Well, multiple. Well, it started already, because Perseverance is the first part of it. Mm-hmm. And then in 2026, 27, we'll launch the Earth Return Orbiter, an Ariane 6 from Kourou. We need a full-power Ariane 6-4, and then we're working out how the Sample Effects rover will get there and come back again. It's the duty of our US colleagues to launch that.
Okay, cool. Can you tell us a bit about the OHB exploration projects you are having in the pipeline?
Yeah, sure.
I heard about a few.
I mean, first of all, we are contributing to Gateway, and particularly refueling is one of the topics which we will do in the Gateway. Xenon refueling, nobody has done it up there, and it's mandatory as an infrastructure which we will need in future in space, from my point of view. We support a lot the European independent access to the lunar surface. So I think the logistic lander, the large lander, is really something which we need to have in Europe. It's our truck to get there. But actually, we want to be a bit faster. As a kind of IOD, IOV purpose mission, we want to go faster to the moon with a much smaller vehicle, not at all a competition to EL3, more a Pathfinder.
IOV, just for our audience and for me.
In-orbit demonstration and verification.
Thank you.
So we want to give research institutes, industry, and so on an opportunity to be very soon on the lunar surface. And we have a long, long list of interest. Actually, you can practically say if we materialize this mission, the first 2 missions are already booked, if you want. It's a small lander, we call it ELSAS, Lunar Surface Access Service. So ESA is planning the truck, I would say. We do a taxi. It's 100 kg, a bit more than 100 kg payload, purely commercial. We offer a service, you pay for a payload, we bring you to the moon. Strong interest by companies, by research institutes, because they want just to test in small scale what they want to bring in larger scale with actually the opportunity which ESA will provide together with European industry. They want to test it on the surface, and we want to be there not later than 25, so pretty soon. That's not too far away. First mission. So we see it a bit as a precursor or gap filler, or however you want to call it, to EL3. By far not a replacement, because EL3 has, 15 times the capacity, I would say. It's a totally different story. But we believe in general that the future of exploration needs to be a combination out of publicly funded infrastructure and services, plus purely private, plus combined PPP initiatives. Only the combination of all 3 will get Europe to where we need to be in exploration and on the moon. I think privately coming up with a service like EL3 likely a bit difficult. A small thing like we are doing it with ELSAS is possible on a private financing scheme and a pure servicing scheme. So we'll offer an affordable, a cost-efficient service, pure new space approach. Otherwise, it's not affordable. We intend to go to the South Pole, which actually allows you a relatively long mission because you have a shorter night and therefore more energy. And it's all about, as I said, IOD, IOV. So there's an ambition to get to the moon pretty fast. And as I said, we are speaking with interest from institutes, even from national agencies, but in particular from companies. Many companies who want to test their applications for the lunar surface very fast. So I really believe the combination out of private initiative, institutional initiative, will bring Europe in a very favorable position on the lunar surface.
Staying on the lunar surface, Laura, so why is the lunar surface, lunar economy, ecosystem, so to say, it's a big word for, hey, we put something in there, but why is that the next step? Why does it make sense?
So for me,
I'm coming now to the why question.
yeah, because and obviously we are fully involved in working together with ESA on all of these topics that Dave has talked about. And what I liked is also that you've got the complementary aspects, again, on that end-to-end experience. But we need to have, again, something that raises the bar to have that complex challenge. And I think the lunar ecosystem does exactly that. I think the LEO area is great for rapid testing, like trying new technologies, iterating and improving, and taking that up to our neighbour just around the corner, which is the moon. I appreciate some people want to go straight to Mars. I personally think, and this is our view in Airbus, that answering the technological challenges, such as habitation, basics, air, water, food, these kind of things, fuel, surface mobility, logistics, and eventually having a launch capacity on the moon that allows us to explore further. And again, we can use LEO to do rapid testing. We can use the moon to really try and do it in a modular and scaled fashion. And that's important as well, because we like to think we're going to launch this huge project and we're going to build the all singing, all dancing final thing. No, we get the opportunity to go modular and to work, again, collaboratively across Europe with the expertise. I'm approached on practically a daily basis from another company, a startup, an SME that's got a great idea, and it fits together. And that's where we try to support as the bigger player in industry by offering up our capacity and resource. And also it's inspiring. Let's make it a little bit more tangible. Let's not talk about we're going to do this module or this technological capability. I'd like to see 2035, you've got a couple of astronauts about to sit down to dinner, preferably with a nice bottle of Corbière. But, make it so it talks to the person on the street that's going to see that and say, that's what we're going to do. I want to be part of it. And inspiring the new young STEM talents.
Yeah, and as an engineer turned, as I said, second-rate engineer turned third-rate administrator, I want to give you a science answer as well, which is why is the moon interesting by itself? It's not just interesting as a place to tramp around and take pictures of. That's as I always say, think of it as a museum of 4 billion years of solar system history. In the days of Apollo, we basically went there, went to the museum gift shop, grabbed a few souvenirs and came home again. Okay? What we want to go there this time is explore the dusty corners of the museum where the interesting stuff is. It's soaked up 4 billion years of solar system history. So if we want to understand the early history of the Earth, we want to go to the moon. And maybe we can find what people call paleoregoliths. Okay, what the hell's that? Basically material that predates or dates from the era of the cataclysm that created the moon, when giant impact in the early stages of the solar system, because plate tectonics means it's all lost on planet Earth. It's gone forever. It may still be on the moon. Where did the water come from? How is it distributed through our solar system? The moon is one of the places we can go to. It's a place to study the universe, study our own sun, a great location, a place on the far side to look into deep space, the cosmic dark ages with radio telescopes. So it's a place to do things exactly the way Antarctica is on Earth. All sorts of incredible science has been done in Antarctica that we hadn't planned when we went there in the first place.
And again, thank you, that's the complementary aspect. For me also, and I would just like to add this because it's important, I listened to the Copernicus panel earlier. We talk about we need to clean up the Earth before we go anywhere else. And I think this is a narrative that we need to challenge and change. If we can address the technological challenges that are on to build a lunar ecosystem, then we're answering to a lot of the problems that are on Earth. And we need, again, that inspiration to do it, because we've had a lot of the data we have about the situation on the Earth for years. and I'm not seeing people rallying to fix it. So this is why for me also, but the science is absolutely important, and as someone that loves science, I totally support.
Thank you. I was just still processing, imagining how wine tastes on the moon. I don't want to imagine that. However,
I think it would be
possibly a
helpful
bit
for
dusty.
winemakers.
no. Jean-Luc. Let's talk about Exotrail. I mean, how could you illustrate that the moon and potentially Mars, then if we want to go that far, will become the new frontier to explore for a company like yours? I mean, many of us worked in companies with big dreams and want to go somewhere, but why you?
No, so I really would like to come back a bit on what you were saying and giving concrete examples. So let me give one. We have at Exotrail. So some weeks ago, so we signed a first contract with a US company. Mm-hmm. So it's official. So the company is York Space Systems. And the idea behind this contract is to provide thrusters on a satellite built by this company. And this satellite is a satellite for telecommunication to be injected around Moon. Mm-hmm. So it's something real. The launch is scheduled at the end of this year, so we are not speaking about 10 years program, 10 years exploration. So it's already happening. And what is very interesting is that when you dig a bit behind this contract, who is a customer of York Space System is Intuitive Machines. I don't know if you know this company. Intuitive Machines is part of the CLPS program among Astrobotics, Mass and Space System, and so on. And so the CLPS is a commercial lunar payload services program. And who is behind that? It's NASA, through the Artemis program. And what happens when the CLPS program has been proposed is that NASA has defined the need. We need to go to the moon as soon as possible. They defined a schedule, a very harsh schedule. So in 5 years, we need to be there. And they defined the budget, I would say. But it was all. At the end, they pushed contracts at, let's say, towards companies, which are very young companies, startups as we are. And so I think it's a very good example of real things happening, not yet in Europe, I think. So once again from the US, but we can take this example. It's a very good example because we are not speaking about years, we are speaking about months. And at the end of this year, we will have products as a private company around the moon.
But to be fair, CLIPS is, correct me if I'm wrong, 2-point-something billion dollar? I mean, that's not the budget you operate your department with, isn't it?
So we got to talk about
maybe my numbers were...
I wish, yeah. I mean, our space exploration budget is 7% of NASA's annual budget. 7%.
Yeah.
So, but what has just been described is exactly what we have done in low Earth orbit and we want to do in going to the moon. And we are doing with Lunar Pathfinder already. So exactly that thing. We're not buying a spacecraft. We're not even specifying the requirements. We're just buying a service. And somebody else is specifying, designing, building their spacecraft. So give me more budget, we can do a hell of a lot more of it.
Perhaps a point on the CLPS, because I think what's interesting to see is that if you take a company like Astrobotics for a $75 million US dollar contract and then for a $150 million contract, they're going to develop and operate and land on the moon 2 small lunar landers. And to come to this price point, okay, NASA has put some money
Tens of millions behind it, yes, R&D. I mean, that's the relationship, the critical relationship between the public sector and the private sector. Is ESA's role has to and is evolving from being the customer, the requirement setter for everything, to being the enabler of these things to happen.
Yeah. And this enabler, I think this word is exactly correct. So it's, at least for us at the exploration company, it's an enabling role. Like the public is investing of things where it's too risky and it's too important as an amount for a private company to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. But we are funded by private investors. And we've raised one of the biggest seed round in Europe. So it means you have private people who are ready to take risks on the entrepreneurial side, on the financial side, because they see that this trend is mainstream. And this is why I was taking the example of the internet at the beginning. This is something mainstream, which is just happening and is going to change a lot of things. So at the beginning, like big infrastructures, like communication, like also the aviation at the beginning, there is the need for public money, especially to unrisk some technologies. But afterwards, and in parallel, there is also a private business popping up on the shoulders of these, let's say, key technologies and key infrastructures that have been enabled by the public money. And I think we are in this new dynamism where there is a partnership, there is a, let's say, a common risk approach, a smart risk approach between, on the one hand, the public institutions, giving this initial push, accelerating the development of technologies, on the other hand, private companies taking a bit more risk and also backed by private money. And this is what we are seeing in the US, and I think we are the down of that in Europe.
It's not only a money issue, it's an approach. And the CLPS program is a good example. Doing that, doing only an enable approach, you create a momentum, you create an ecosystem with a small company, with large companies, and then you push frontiers in that. You create know-hows, and the know-hows will be reused for the next steps. And then, as Hélène was mentioning, now there is a new thing that we are able to find VCs, which are able to back the companies such as we are. So that's really not only a money issue. For sure the money helps, but there is also the approach which is on top of that.
Yes, and the aspect that as the administrator in the middle of this finds it entertaining is it also challenges the existing space companies. So in other words, when we come to EL3, we're asking ourselves, okay, are we buying a lander, or maybe we're buying a service? Or if we're buying a lander, how much is industry going to invest in it? Because maybe we don't want to fund all of it ourselves. If you think this is a good product, are you ready to invest in it?
Yeah.
I mean,
because we're not going to build one, we're going to build 4 or 5.
Let's ask industry.
Yes,
we have some here. So.
But I said earlier, we need this PPP model, we need these private-public partnership models for such new endeavors. Otherwise, he spoke about his budget compared to another budget. I mean, if we just rely on ESA budgets, we will over time fall behind. So we need to combine ESA budgets, we need ESA to trigger things, to bring us to new technologies, but we need to combine it with private financing to really leverage on it. And actually this will mean as well that the public money will come back with a huge return. I think multipliers will in future be higher than the one you mentioned up to now. And that's at the end what the taxpayer is expecting as well, that he's not just investing it for curiosity, as you said, nice to have it, but as well to see economic impact and a positive impact on the challenges of this world coming back. So clearly service models will come, and it's good that they come, because at the end we will really do the things which are interesting for those who want to get such a service. If everything is publicly financed, we might as well develop big monsters where at the end there's no demand. If you're on the service model, you orient yourself strictly on the demand.
I think it's certainly, I mean, as you're aware, we invest a lot of our private money, if I say that, in Airbus on these topics. So this is not even a question. I think we also need to change the approach. And we have a tendency on a top-down way to be very prescriptive on this is what it must look like, this is what the technologies are, etc., etc. Let's not do that. Let's say it needs to be an Amazon delivery service to the moon, and let the experts and the talented engineers come up with the best solution. And I think this is what we see also with the startups. And this has been the big shake-up, I think, in the last 10 years that people have seen. We can talk about SpaceX in particular, where it's like, if you back off, they will come creative, and it should be allowed to fail and to try and to test and improve. And I come back to this because it's such a difficulty, and I don't like the term old space, new space. I'm not bothered about that. But really describe the experience and say, we want to do this. How do we do it for the most efficient way, in a collaborative way, not doing it in duplicate so that 10 different organizations are trying to do the same thing? For me, that's a waste of talent and resource. But to be clear, what is the experience we want to do? and a time frame. And again, it should be iterative in terms of improvement. So we don't try to build the perfect thing at the start. You mentioned, Ellen, the car. Can you imagine if when the first Ford Model T, they said, no, we want to wait until we've got something looking like a Ferrari of today. Oh, well, there you go, choice. So can you imagine? We would be nowhere. It's about that. And I think, again, this is where we need to change the approach, as you said.
Is Airbus turning the old monster already into this new space company approach? Just, I can ask this question very bluntly. So,
Please do, and I will answer very honestly. Again, we don't look at it as old space and an old monster. And I have the privilege to work with some of the most talented minds, not just in Airbus, but in collaboration with startups. We do that. Yes, we've got some things that take longer than others, but again, then that's our benefit. We have access to a huge amount of resource around the world. And again, the different talents, and I've seen engineers move in different positions, different programs. So this is not our goal. Our goal is to look at what are the next steps, and again, coming back to that end-to-end human experience in space. Eventually, and that should be the target.
And at the end, you will have both approaches. You will not do something like James Webb in a new space approach. Likely not. But you will need to be able to do both. Very complex, very sophisticated missions which have tens of years of development time and whatever.
Yes.
And you will test them forever, because just you want to be sure that your big investment and all what you have not only invested in money but in engineering resources and so on will not fail. But you need to have, at the same point in time, exactly this iterative approach, more agile, faster, risk-taking, fail fast, and learn from it.
Agile is for me the key word.
Both worlds will be there.
Absolutely.
And the ultimate example is obviously the human space flight is we have in Europe the technology completely to do a human spaceflight vehicle, no question. The heritage from ATV, the heritage from ARD, blah, blah, blah. It's all there. Life support systems, really good at that. The challenge actually is the testing and the safety aspects.
Yeah.
It's not inherently so much more complicated, but if you're putting human beings on board, you really need to know it's going to work. And that's why human space flight is relatively more expensive than robotic exploration. And the challenge is to find a pathway that goes from robotic missions going out there, robotic missions coming back, and then adding the human spaceflight capability in a step-by-step approach. So, but that's way above my pay grade. It's doable in Europe. It's a political choice as to whether we want to do it.
I mean, I know that I'm going now completely off script, but I mean, just for the sake of having you here on this panel, I think that's worth to ask. You talked about your department and talking about new space and human exploration. That is something what, for me, even from the mindset that we agree new space is just a mindset and agility thing, does that fit together? Can you afford that from the risk?
Can we afford, sorry, clarify.
A new space approach in human spaceflight and human exploration?
Well, I don't know. In the old space, new space is kind of passive-aggressive to me. The point exactly the point I'm making is, however you get to do human spaceflight, it's going to involve a lot of testing and a lot of verification before you put human beings on board, because the astronauts, typically in the system, the astronauts are involved in verifying whether they're safe to fly vehicles. Exactly, they were involved directly with Crew Dragon, with Boeing. They're involved in that process, so it takes much time and money. And so, look, it took Elon Musk about 10 years, basically. So the Cargo Dragon contract was about 2010, if I remember right, and about 2012, 2013 for 2014 Crew Dragon. We were supposed to do it in 5 years. It took 7 years, so it's now operational. It's about a 10-year time frame using a new space approach.
Okay. Fair point.
Thank you. And at the end, there's not one new space approach or so. I mean, it's about agility, it's about the level of risk you want to take or you don't want to take, which is totally different depending on the mission and so on. I mean, if you have a 20,000 satellite constellation, you don't care if 5 satellites are failing or 10 or 100. If you go for human spaceflight, you don't want a single flight to fail. Yeah? But
with
the
new
approach
space,
is
it
more
helps better.
about, again, let's not always speak about these new space, old space. It's about how we can get more agility in, how can we look at our processes, make them more agile, more flexible. But at the end, I mean, Dave is totally right. At the end, testing depends on the risk you are prepared to take. And the risk you're prepared to take is 10 to the power of -9. Then you test like hell, new space or old space.
Yeah.
So I'd like to perhaps provide some light on this question, because we are, inverted comma, I would prefer instead new space or space. We are a space tech startup. This is who we are. And we start with cargo. We start with low Earth orbit, with the purpose, the willingness to have humans on board at a certain point in time. And the way we envision the risk and, let's say, our technical roadmap is to say, let's go extremely fast, as simple as possible, without the fear to fail. Because when you fail, you learn. So to give very concrete example, we are having this morning our preliminary requirement review, so end of phase A, chaired by a former General Inspector of the European Space Agency with people from DLR, ESA, etc. And we started working full-time, our small team, in September. So I think this is the way of, speed we are throwing. We had the chance to be selected by ESA to fly a very, very small demonstration on the Ariane 6 maiden flight. So that's going our first, let's say, demo, etc. And when I say we don't mind, I would say, failing, I'll give you again a very concrete example. So we're going to have a subscale demonstration capsule that we want to fly in October 24. We're opening next week. We're launching our community of users and opening the pre-booking of this 24 demonstration capsule. And we are telling to our users who are potential clients. And by the way, 60% of the people invited at this event are coming from non-space industries, which shows also the potential, business potential, which is in this new business. We are telling them, perhaps this demonstration will fail. Perhaps power, will not be there. Perhaps we'll have some problems when we re-enter, because that's a demonstration. But you will learn what space can do for your business. You will learn how to fly. We will learn how you're going to use our capsule, and we can design our vehicle based on your needs. And okay, there will be perhaps some failures because nothing will be, absolutely perfect, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of money to go from 96% safety to 99.999. So we will not do this extra mile, but going from 0 to 96%, that's a huge learning curve. And it's really about what's the risk you take. Effectively, as a matter of fact, when you fly humans, you cannot take this kind of risk. But you can learn and then come to a reliability which is very high. And the same for our engines. We're going to manufacture our first chamber, and we're going to crack that chamber, because you are super reliable when you know your limits, when you know your margins. So you have two ways of mastering reliability. One is to say I take huge margins, I test like crazy, and then I fly. The other is I crack, I fail, but smart, because I know what I want to measure when I fail, and then learning that, I correlate my models on a huge number of tests, and also I start with simple things like cargo, and then I go to humans. So it's two different ways, and I think the startup approach, because anyhow we don't have the money to do a lot of tests and to do a lot of margin, and we have, by the way, no data. So we have to test to correlate our model. We have no historic data. So that's, I would say, the different way of doing things. And I believe it can bring accelerated speed and perhaps lower costs, but we'll have to see in the future.
I would like to try to have a chance for a second round, because we spent an hour on the first one, but it's fun. Yeah, I mean, we take the time that it needs. And what take back the focus on Europe, inspiration, talents, as you mentioned before, and if possible, one thing was very close to my heart, maybe you can bring in your sustainability approaches on that, because I think doing the exploration for, hey, leave the Earth and go to somewhere else or to have a better life, we take just our problems with us, as we, I think, all agree. But Laura, your thoughts on that, on the innovation, inspiration, Europe side?
For the European side, and I don't want to come back to the previous discussion, but that's exactly where I think Europe needs to recognize and celebrate its strengths. And that is, I mean, when I look at some of the projects and programs we're doing, we don't do it alone in Airbus. We're working with institutions, we're working with these startups, and we have so many great different ideas that, again, it's not the big sexy item, it's like all the little component elements that you need to bring together to reduce the risk eventually, to put humans in space. So I think Europe needs to also celebrate that, and as you said, Dave, unless you get a significant increase in budget sometime soon, we need to take advantage of that and show the value that that brings on the end-to-end human experience in space. And I would like to touch on something in terms of inspiration, and I think we need to change the narrative that Europeans see. Jean-Marc mentioned yesterday that they did a poll in France, and you know, people said it's cool space, yeah, but it's not necessary. And when I see some of the public figures in Europe/UK who say we shouldn't be wasting our money to do this, and I wholly disagree. And we need to communicate effectively to people across Europe. This is what you get in your daily lives thanks to what we've pushed because of space exploration. And we don't do that well enough. We have the wrong kind of narrative in social media, and that's something that I would like to see changed. So I'll try and keep it short.
Yeah. I mean,
I saw the number go red.
If you can tailor your answer to 2 or 3 minutes, that would be wonderful. Not to go too much into the red. But Lutz, you were nodding.
Just adding to
Yes,
what was
please,
just said.
go ahead.
I don't know this recent, if you know this recent opinion poll in Europe, where people were asked if space adds value to their personal life, or no value to their personal life, or if it's vital. If I recall it correctly, 60% said no real added value, 40% there is added value, and 0% said it's vital. I mean,
and some of those were taxi drivers relying entirely on GNSS systems.
Wouldn't find their way without GNSS. Yeah, so we need to make the European citizen more aware what space brings to him. The investment per capita is too low, honestly. We need to do more. Competition is increasing. I think we need to be stronger, but we need to do everything what we said already, which is being more agile, making more of the money, combining institutional money with private money, and all the things which we discussed already. And I think those examples where really benefit on Earth has been brought back from space applications. This is something which we need to promote much more. The awareness is not there where it should be. We are bad in promoting what we have brought to everybody's life.
But as we are sitting here together, what are your thoughts? How can we do that? I mean, how can you reach the other 99%? Give me one thing, and I'm happy to run it on our magazine, yeah, or wherever we have access to.
I'm not that long in the space industry, since 2018. I've been in aerospace for my life, but in space only since 2018. I have never seen such a bubble like space. I mean, look at this conference. It's space people talking to space people.
It's an echo chamber.
Yeah, and you know, even the politicians which are here, they are all convinced of space, but we don't invite those who are not convinced.
Yeah.
We don't get them here. So we need to get out of the bubble. We need to communicate more. This is one point. The second thing is, and it was already said a bit as well, it's about collaboration, cooperation, joining forces. We need to do transnational. I mean, I'm even a bit concerned about the recovery program, where lots of money goes back to national programs, and I appreciate those nations who have given the money to ESA, actually, because nationalism is what we don't need. We need cooperation, collaboration, joining forces, acting together, speaking together, being vocal together, and then it will come.
Yeah, I'm not in the position to discuss a geo-return here on this panel, so I don't want to. But, can we... A very quick remark, or because otherwise I would...
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. Vision is for sure important. Communication is key. As you mentioned, citizens have to be aware that space is already useful on a daily basis. But coming back on concrete things for company, as we are with the exploration company and Exotrail, that we are small companies, up to now, with a great ambition, We want to become leaders, clearly. But we are funded by VCs, so we are backed by VCs. VCs are putting money in companies like us, and it's a financial risk. And we translate this financial risk in our development approach. And that's why the new space world is important, because the new space is the way we develop things. And to develop things when you have financial risk, that we need to slice your story in elementary phases, elementary steps. And for each steps, you need to define what is my MVP, my minimum viable product, because at the end of the day, what we need to survive is to get revenue as soon as possible in our story. So one approach could be, okay, we want to do exploration in Europe, fine. We are different actors, institutions, large companies, startups. Let's sit around the table and try to slice the exploration topic in elementary phases. And for each steps, let's identify if the technologies are already existing or not. Does the companies are already existing? If yes, okay, we can push contracts in large or small companies. If not, maybe we can use the European money, and there are lots of announcements yesterday, just to support the creation of new companies to address these things. And at the end of the journey, because of this iterative process, the reliability will be as good as what we used to do in space. So I really think that we have to be optimistic on that. It's just we have to combine the approach and to define the exploration as a sum of elementary steps we have to define together, and who is doing what.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ellen,
Yeah, so I'd like to come to your question, which was about inspiration and sustainability. I think we are at a time when, given the speed of space exploration, etc., Europe has to become very strong and credible players, and we come back here to human spaceflight. And this comes back to a political common understanding of bringing humans into this exploration area as fast as possible. And if we look to the past, there were some key points in history, like, for example, the creation of a strong aerospace industry, when at a political level, it was understood that this was absolutely key for the future of our continent. Same when Ariane was created. And by the way, the model of Ariane, when it was a price per kilogram, which was very competitive, has proven also that when you start with public investment, then you can have models with two legs, private and public. So what I want to say is that we are at a time when we first and foremost we need to unite us, industries, together with the agencies, to push towards a political decision so that human spaceflight is happening in a time frame which is compatible with the speed of the space exploration. And this is extremely inspirational for our children. This is extremely inspirational for Europe because it brings political unity to see a European flag on the moon and, brought by European astronauts. I think this is absolutely obvious. Most of the people probably in the room have children, etc. And this is something I believe also extremely important at a time when Europe is in danger by nationalism. And then about sustainability, you see in media always like billionaires going up there and polluting the planet. Indeed, we have to make an effort to show the boomerang effect of technologies developed in space. And we can take, I think, very common sense ideas. Like if you travel to Mars for 6 months, right? You'll have to live in a complete sustainable environment because there is simply no other ways to do it. So all the living technologies you're going to develop there, recycling technologies, have a direct impact about recycling things on the Earth. Like very, very simple stuff. Like you go to the moon, you want to have plants on the moon, so you have very low energies, very low water, and you want to have high yields, or in transportation. So this is critical for us for the future of agriculture. So I think perhaps we shall have a few common messages and let's say talk more towards non-space industries, towards journalists about, okay, back to basics, this will have a huge boomerang effect. It's not just for the fun to have a flag on the moon, basically.
Thank you. Dave, one final question to you. So what are in this context of Europe, what are the next key decisions that Europe faces? And I mean, we heard about not just heard about it, we know about the ministerial conference end of this year, what is critical, and as Joseph said, this year will be very, very challenging for all of us, so as well as exciting. So what are the concrete next steps that are influencing the exploration side?
Okay, well, from the ESA side, yes, we're heading towards a ministerial. As I said, we created the exploration program in 2016. We put some fuel in the tank in 2019. So I was told I was mad to ask for 30% more money, a third more money in 2019 compared to 2016. So I must be insane now because we're going to ask for a 50% more money. And that is going to deliver all the projects that I've talked about already. So the Orion's going to the moon, astronauts going to the space station, flying the new set of astronauts that we're going to select later this year. In parentheses, something that's really important to me, which is the Para-Astronaut project, which is, some people estimate 20% of the population of some sort of disability. And we, Europe, are making the step up to say, well, why aren't any of those people going into space? So we want to do that, close brackets. We want to carry on building the Gateway and the missions to Mars. But the key, two key decision points are our lunar truck to the moon, the EL3, by which is a mechanism that we hope to ensure that there is a European astronaut on the surface of the moon by the end of this decade. That's the goal. It's a political decision ministers have to take, but we can do that. And also then to provide the comms and nav around the moon that I was talking about, to provide a permanent infrastructure. Because if astronauts are going to go to the moon, you want to be with your 3D holographic goggles on, experience it yourself. And that's one of the ways we're going to get mass communication, a mass connection, is that you don't want to watch it on a fuzzy black and white TV like I did 50 years ago. You want to kind of participate in it as a citizen yourself. And so therefore the comms and nav capability sounds boring, but is incredibly enabling for lunar exploration. And so those two key decision points are what's on the table for the ministerial, as well as the wider political reflection, which our Director General has launched about, does Europe need its own human exploration capability? But that's not a project decision point for this year.
Got it. Okay, we're running almost out of time. I challenge you now with a 30-second, what can we communicate to the other 99% on why exploration matters? What is your key message to the general public, not to the people in the bubble? They're convinced already, so forget about them. The others. I start with you.
Space exploration is about the future, and that's where I expect to live.
In 20 years, our children will have the choice, and they better have the choice in Europe, benefiting from the European industry.
Yes, space exploration is about human curiosity, for sure. But let's say, talk about a Confucius sentence that when a man wants to move a complete mountain, you have to start with the small rocks first. So let's try to do that first.
Laura.
For me, it's in human nature to want to explore, to continue to pioneer, and to go further and grow. And we need to give that inspiration to people. And I also would say that space exploration will continue to enable us to answer the problems that we have today on Earth.
I have an issue with that. And that's why I said I would like to challenge you to reach the other 99%. Because are the other 99% explorers as well? Or just couch potatoes?
No, but this is where we need to change the communication. I said the words earlier, effective communication, which I'm not going to
Recording in progress.
Thank you.
Which I'm not going to fit into 30 seconds, but we have to do effective communication to the people that are scrolling on their phones, such as, without space exploration, you wouldn't even have that phone. This is the kind of, but you've got to target it to the audience, so I'm not going to go into detail in 30 seconds.
Okay.
From my point of view, there's only two events which have really driven big steps in technology and innovation. One were huge challenges, going to new frontiers. The other one were wars. I prefer to go to new frontiers and to go out in space And this will drive technological development and bring us to the next step where we all on Earth will benefit from. And we have examples, we can bring these examples to the public, show them, make them aware where everybody benefits from it. And this will go on. And if we go for this challenge, that will be a huge, huge step in technological development and innovation, and it will better the life of everybody.
Great, thank you very much. At least I enjoyed this panel very much. Thank you, Dave, Elaine, Jean-Luc, Laura, and Lutz. Thank you very much, dear audience. I hope you could take your thoughts away, and we could provide some food for thought to you. And yeah, hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to session 14 at the European Space Conference. This is where we discuss enhancing Europe's activities in space science and technology, one of the closing conversations for today. Just wait for our colleagues at the back of the room to filter out. I have two people in the studio here with me today, and we have three people, I hope, tuning in online. I'll just go through them quickly, and perhaps they can just wave the online guys to see if they're hooked up okay. Here, first of all, on my right is the CEO of ANERA, the French research organization, and the chairman of ESRE, the European umbrella organization, Bruno Sagnon.
Hello, everybody.
Bruno.
Hello.
Then over there on the right-hand side is Gunther Hassinger. He's the director of science at the European Space Agency.
Hello. Nice to be
Looking
here.
online, we've got Luca Rossettini. He's the CEO of D-Orbit. Are you there, Luca?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for inviting me.
Super, good to have you on board. Then we have Andrea Lani. He's the project coordinator of MIST in Leuven. Are you there, Andrea?
Yes, thank you for having me.
Super. We're going to hear lots more about your project very shortly. And then finally, Dan Chirondoyan. He's the director of space security and migration at the JRC. Are you there, Dan?
Yes, I'm there. Hello, everybody.
Super. Thank you all for joining us. So let's get straight into the conversation. We have an hour to discuss this, and it's quite a broad topic to look at how Europe is moving ahead with science and technology in the fiercely competitive space sector at the moment. Gunther, I wanted to start with you, because you oversee a number of incredible projects. Maybe before we look at how we can enhance Europe's position, can you just give us a big run-through of the big ESA European space technology projects that are going on at the moment?
Thank you very much, Josh. A great pleasure to be here. I first would like to say this is the very first time at this conference that science is actually a topic. So I'm very happy and proud about that. And it also shows the appreciation and the growing apprehension. And I would like to focus on European leadership in science and technology, because leadership also requires inspiration, and it requires also technology development. So what I would like to say is that science, space science, astrophysics are actually among the most democratic sciences of all. And they are historically ones that are really living from international cooperation. So international cooperation is ingrained in the DNA of our activities. I mean, within Europe, we are 22 member states, but then also within the whole world with the US, with Russia, with China, with Japan, and so on. But on the other hand, you need to have leadership in certain aspects. So Sophie Wilms, the Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium, yesterday at her inauguration speech said, there are countries who create, there are countries who copy, and there are countries who legislate. And she said, hopefully Europe will remain a country to create. And creation means actually that you have to be always up front, so to speak, in front of everybody else. You cannot do this in every field, but you can do it in a certain areas. And so I'm very happy that in Europe, the European Space Agency, I mean, we are partnering with everybody, but we are also leading in certain areas. I would like to mention the Gaia mission, which is the astrometry mission, which is now producing more papers than the Hubble Space Telescope and really transforming our knowledge. I would like to mention, for instance, LISA, the gravitational wave technology that is led in Europe. And then also the fascinating landings on the Rosetta mission landings on the Comet, and the Cassini-Huygens mission landing on the most distant object in the universe. So these are European leadership assets, which are also based on also European technology development, and we would like to push that into the future. And I'm happy to talk about several of these missions that we have and that are coming up, but maybe for the beginning that should be the start.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great primer, and then we'll move into the substance of the projects in a little while. But Bruno, just looking from, obviously you're working both from the French perspective, but then looking to boost research and development through ESRE at a European level. What are the major projects you're working on, and what are the potential benefits for Europe focusing on this topic?
I think that I would like to embark on what has just been said earlier. It's important to remind people that we have already strong successes. You know, that we have EGNOS, we have Galileo, we have already EGNOS, I said, sorry, Sentinel satellites and so on. And all these programs have been successes before they had been, the technologies, as it has said, has been developed. But before technology, there is research. Before research, there is science. And man must not forget to work on that. And that's one of the things we do in ESRE. We, in each of our country, because you asked me to speak about the French experience, but it's the same kind in all my colleagues of the ESRE board. In each of our country, we are sort of a bridge between the academics and the industry. We can work with people working on very low TRL, and help them and involve ourselves to bring them at a level in which industry will use that. That's exactly what we've done, and that's exactly why we created ESRE in 2016. So, and I will give you examples of that in a few moments if you want, yes.
Just quickly to follow up on that though, why did you feel that you needed to create ESRE in 2016? I mean, was there a gap in terms of advocating for European research and development projects?
It was the conscience that we had to unite to be stronger, which is quite usable, I say. Most of there were 5 entities at that time discussing. Now we are 8, but we wanted to be sure at the beginning to have the same ideas between the 5 of ourselves. And we had also discussions with ESA people. We said, we need you because, you know, industry's priorities are short-term problems because they have to deliver, they have to produce, they have to, and we need to have some people more agile, more able to be reactive or to propose disruptive ideas to us, and that's what also we've done. And just because one of the topics yesterday, which was on the table, is a new GovSatcoms introduced by Mr. Breton. Let me remind you that in 2016, ESA made a tender because we all know that the GovSatcom have a limited capacity to produce data when people want more and more data. So we won the tender made by ESA, and the conclusion made by ESA was that with the technology which provided, and I can tell you about that later if you want, is able to multiply by 1,000 the future capacity. So you see that if we use those bricks, those individual bricks which has been already raised, we can fill the needs of this important new program which are launched. That's typically what we are trying to do.
Okay, thanks for that great primer. Dan, the JRC, just to come to you next, typically the JRC is described as the European Commission's research wing. What is it doing to develop space projects and to look into this sector?
Okay, thanks for the question. So my directorate is Space Security and Migration, which is in the Joint Research Center. And I remind you that the Joint Research Center is the science and knowledge service of the European Commission. And we can say that we are the interface between science and policy. And I can tell you that space has been a central competence of the Joint Research Center for over 30 years, and our expertise in the science policy interface has enabled us to be a key innovator in space for policy. And I give the example of the Global Monitoring for Environment and Security, a service that started in 1998 based on the science done by GRC, and we are involved in the implementations. And we are still running now the 2 Copernicus services, the emergency management service and the land monitoring service. And I'm very happy to say that we have 10 years since we have the emergency management service run through Copernicus and the global land service. Regarding to innovating, this is something that we are permanently doing. and the close relationship with the policy ensure that new needs are met quickly. For example, last year, we introduced a new exposure component in the emergency management service, which is called the Global Human Settlement Layer, which is mapping buildings and people at unprecedented detail to capture the rapid population growth and urbanization. So, which is a driver for disaster risk, but also drivers for unsustainable development. And just to finish this first round, we are moving now in Earth observation from monitoring to understanding. So we are trying to push the boundaries of artificial intelligence algorithms that process the full archive of free and open Sentinel data. And we established a new tool, which is the Knowledge Center on Earth Observation through Copernicus, where we try to establish a mechanism to cumulatively discuss EU policy needs, assess our priorities, and analyze how these needs can be transformed into targeted products and services. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dan, for a quick overview of what's going on at the JRC. Now we can go to the industry side. Luca Rossettini, you're the CEO of D-Orbit. Thank you for joining us online again. Can you just give us a quick primer for what exactly D-Orbit does and how it's boosting innovation in the European space sector?
Yeah, sure. So thank you again. So D-Orbit is a space logistics and infrastructure company. At the moment, we are the only company worldwide that is capable of delivering satellites exactly where they need to be, reducing the time from launch to revenues for our customers by up to 85%, and also reducing the overall cost of deployment for entire constellations by up to 40%. So that's quite an interesting service that is going to lead us into other areas. One is advanced services, and I will specify what I mean with that. And then in the future, in-orbit servicing that is going to complete the suite of services that we are going to deliver to satellite operators mainly. So let's say the orbit focus on what I define space-to-space market rather than on space-to-earth market. That is the main market today, right? So we are focusing on the market that is going to grow more and more in the future. So what we are doing now, so before telling you what we do, I would like to say something about the importance of science also for the business, right? So when we started our business, so the last mile delivery of satellites, that was considered science fiction. But science fiction is the science of tomorrow, and the science is actually the business of tomorrow, right? So these aspects are all connected. So if we really want to accelerate innovation, then we need to be able to accelerate like science towards business, towards market. And that's where space is showing several bottlenecks. So today, 80% of the public money spent in research and development in space does not reach the market. And one of the reasons is very simple. So let's take a startup that has an amazing idea, a new payload that can deliver like incredible new services to like citizens on Earth. So they go to an investor, right? So or they get a grant from the government to develop this technology. Once the technology is ready, they say, oh wow, the technology is ready now to sell it. I need more money. So they go back, and the replies usually is, okay, show me that it's working. But if you are working in space, you need to prove that it's working in space. And that's actually one of the biggest bottlenecks today. So to get to space, to prove a new technology or a new service, it takes between 2 and 5 years and 2 to 6 million euro. This is not affordable for research institutes, and this is not affordable for startups in Europe. So what we do in order to accelerate the go-to-market, and of course, it's good for us as well, right? Because if those technologies are going to be successful, there will be more satellites that we can serve in orbit in the future. So what we do, instead of transporting only satellites in orbit, we allocate slots for innovative technologies in order to test them in no time in orbit. The cost that is actually moved into the orbital phase, so the advance payment is not comparable with the, extremely high expenses that anyone has to incur, and you just pay on a monthly basis while you are running the test. Just to give you an example, we have on board now on the, not the last satellite that we launched 2 weeks ago, but the one that we launched last year, we have a German company, HPS, that they put on board a DEO sail that is basically a drag sail to demonstrate that it's possible to use those systems to avoid problem of space debris in orbit. We have a Astrophysical Institute, it's called IAC, and the Canary Islands, that they put an innovative thermal camera that is used to detect fires on the planet that we tested. We have other companies that are on board with us with optical communication systems and other innovative payloads. And one important aspect that we are testing is the cloud computing in orbit, thanks to a cooperation with ESA and Unibab, that is another European company. So we have like a real server in orbit. We have 2 now, because one last year and one now. So we start adding nodes to this cloud computing in orbit. And we already tested edge computing directly in space. So, and this was possible in, let's say, less than 15 months, 4 missions, and dozens of payloads, innovative technologies tested in orbit. In 15 months, that in space, it's something that is almost science fiction, right? So this is how the industry can help science for the science to help the industry. And the 2 aspects need to be connected to each other. And that's what the orbit is doing to contribute to accelerate the path.
Do you find, Luca, that the cooperation between ESA, your company, researchers is very fluid in Europe, or could it be a lot better?
Well, let's say, if you ask me this question, let's say a few years ago, probably my answer would be different. So ESA was established a long time ago, and the way that it was working was related to the market that was existing at that time. Now, since few years, the market has changed. So we call it new space, right? So the way you work in the new space is slightly different. And I'm pleased to see that ESA is changing extremely rapidly. If you think that, the entity and how big is ESA, and they are introducing very interesting concepts that are pretty much aligned with the needs of this market. So, for example, there is this concept of accelerator that is not really an incubator for startups. It's really a program in which you have like a fast access to capital in order to deliver the service. So the type of procurement is changing. Now a company can go there and take the responsibility, say, look, I think this service is going to change the humankind. But to get there, I need to go through these 3 steps. So the way ESA is going to work in the near future is not to say, okay, let's sit down and we will fund you, but it's on the other way. So, okay, show me that you reach the milestone, and then I will help you financially. So it's like, share responsibility, right? So companies are willing to take responsibilities because they are confident that they are going to deliver the result. And when they deliver the result, then they get paid. But in this way, the companies can decide how to deliver the result. I used to say this example, to bring four people from A to B, you can rent one Mercedes or like 2 Smarts, right? So it's up to me to decide if I want to use 2 Smarts or one Mercedes to move 4 people from A to B. At the end, the result is the same. So that's actually what is happening right now in Europe, and I'm very pleased because this is exactly what we need. If we fail changing in this direction, if we fail understanding that the market it comes with different requirements, then the competitiveness that we still have it's going to be less and less in the near future.
And just a final question for you, Luca, before we move on to Andrea. For those not fully familiar with the work of D-Orbit already, how many staff do you have and where are you based?
Yeah, so we are now 160 plus people. The headquarters are in Italy, where we have all the production. We have 15 people in UK. That is our fast-growing company right now. We have another 10 people in Portugal. We have a company in US that actually have no people there yet, so it's a commercial hub at the moment, and that's it. So, and we are like growing 100% per year in terms of people right now.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to that, I'm sure, very, very shortly. On to you, Andrea Lani, project coordinator for MIST. Be great to get the perspective on the situation with innovation in Europe from a researcher. And before you talk just generally about the position of researchers in Europe at the moment, could you just explain to us who don't have a PhD in physics already what exactly a hydrodynamic enhanced entry system for space transportation is?
Yes, so basically I'm coordinating with this project, which is funded by the Future Emerging Technology Program. The idea is actually to, going back to Luca, who spoke about science fiction, to try to turn into reality a technology which we have seen in a lot of science fiction movies, which is actually magnetic shielding. So the idea of generating a strong enough magnetic field surrounding the spacecraft, trying to, let's say, modify the flow, the plasma that is generated during very high speed entries into planetary systems. And in this way to protect against, high thermal loads, against troubles with the communication, so what is called the radio communication blackout, and also potentially protect a crew, astronauts, against cosmic radiation. So basically, this kind of project is pretty challenging. It reuses concepts that have been already explored in the past, but not really, let's say, making a serious effort to turn it into a technology which is actually usable. And the game changer has been actually the development during the last years of high temperature superconducting tapes that would allow actually to create some magnet which is lightweight, which has a limited volume, and which eventually is possible to carry on board. In our case, let's say the aim of this 3-year project is just to create a prototype that we will test in plasma wind tunnels, namely at the von Karman Institute in Belgium and at the IRS in Germany. But also, together with the experiments, we will also improve and develop new computational tools to do simulations of these flows. So basically, you are talking about flows in which you have heavy dissociation, ionization, and also once you have ionization, you also have the effect of the magnetic field, both, let's say, already in the plasma, but also induced by the fact that you are using a magnet to actually modify the flow. And so you have experiments, you have simulation, and you have the actual manufacturing of this magnet device. The nice thing in our project is that we have 3 kinds of institutions. We have research centers, we have academia, and we also have companies. Actually, there are 4 companies which are involved. In particular, Absolute System from France is developing a cryogenic system to actually cool down the magnet. Since we are dealing with superconductors, we have to deal with temperature of like 40 K. We have Teva, who is the European leader, maybe even world leader in developing this high temperature superconducting tape. Then we have NSS and EADS. Actually, EADS is a company from Switzerland, so it's not only Europe. We have Switzerland, we also have UK, with the University of Southampton, who is helping with the modeling. So it's a nice example of a project where actually you can afford to move forward towards, let's say, game-changing technology within a very collaborative and multidisciplinary environment. Yeah, so it's quite exciting to be able to lead and to work in such a project.
And your project and the successful development of that technology would have, I imagine, very broad implications for future space exploration projects and the kind of things that we're looking at in this session today.
That's what we hope. I think, so up to now, there has been a lot of investment and research into thermal protection systems, ablators, for instance. But the moment you would be able to have magnetic shielding operating on your vehicle, then you could actually devote a lot more effort into further developing this technology, maybe reducing the impact and the weight of your thermal protection system. I make an example in the Orion capsule from NASA. There are basically 3,000 pounds, so like 1,300 kilos of thermal protection system. Imagine if you can reduce by half that, you would already have much more payload that you can exploit for something interesting. So we are trying to also affect the cost effectiveness of space exploration system by developing this technology.
And you said it's a 3-year project. How easy was it to get the team together? You're working with companies, also the researchers. There's always a complicated endeavor setting up this consortium, if you like. Is it very difficult to source sufficient funding to push a project like that forward? Or actually, are there many companies on board that are able to give you money?
Okay, first of all, you need to, let's say we were working more than a year to just develop the concept. And then there was another moment in which we tried to assemble the team that could allow us to actually implement this concept. Luckily enough, we submitted the proposal only once. We worked quite a lot on it, and we were successful at the first shot. It was surprising also for us, but we actually knew that we were proposing something, which was really game-changing, and we had very diversified team that could help us to. So yeah, I think it's you have to have to find the good players for implementing your concept. And then you have to hope that you can get the funding as soon as possible. Of course, at the end of this project, we will just have a prototype which has been verified in wind tunnels. But then you would have to transfer this technology to flight, and that would require probably at least other 3 years and much more investment, because you have to look at something much more complex, let's say. But the potential is it can really open a new line in the market.
Understood. So Gunther, coming back to you here in Brussels, quite interested in your broad perspective on how Europe promotes itself and its successes in this field, because we know, for example, the Galileo is now the most accurate geolocation service in the world. We know also that Copernicus is excellent. You spoke about Gaia and things like ExoMars, also the Webb telescope as well. It was Europe that put it in orbit. But is Europe very good at promoting its big successes and getting the credit perhaps it deserves?
Indeed, I think we had challenges in, for instance, comparing our successes to NASA. I think NASA clearly is much more professional and puts much more effort in. Also,
is this maybe a cultural difference between Europeans don't like talking up themselves too much?
A cultural difference on one hand. It's also a budget difference, because we are a smaller partner. But just in comparison, for instance, you mentioned James Webb Space Telescope. I think it was really wonderful. And also, for instance, when we launched the Solar Orbiter that was launched on a NASA spacecraft, it was really the two teams were kind of cohesive together, and the presentation was together. So now James Webb was just launched on Christmas, and I believe the whole world saw it, but the whole world saw that Europe is actually not just a minor partner, but really a fundamental game changer in that world. But I believe it boils down, back to the leadership aspect. I think we need to have certain elements where you can clearly point, this is a European leadership element. And I would like to at least present a chain of projects which we would like to present as our leadership. And actually, coming back to both the new space companies, the Orbit and Hermes, we would love to, in the future, to implement some of those science fiction technologies into the next generation things. But you have to be aware that the flagship missions that the science program is preparing typically need about 10 years of technology development, 10 years building, and then they are operating 10 or 20 years. So we are really talking about generational projects, and we need both. I think we need every new project in a certain field has to be about at least a factor 10 better than the previous project. So we need to be big and bold. And when you, for instance, can look at the James Webb Space Telescope, it is 100 times more sensitive than Hubble. And Hubble is already mind-blowing. But I would like to take one example, which is the search for life. Already when we were kids, we were thinking about how did life form? Where did it come from? And we have actually in the European Space Agency science program a whole chain of projects that are looking at the search for life. James Webb will look at exoplanets, but we have a whole armada of exoplanet missions which are already up there. The Cheops mission, for instance, but then Plato will be launched in 26, Ariel will be launched in 29. So we have a whole series of exoplanet missions, and we believe that in about 10 years from now, Europe will be the leading agency for looking for life around other planets. We only know about planets since '95, so this is a very rapidly developing field, and we are really putting a lot of effort there. But search for life is also something that we can do directly in our solar system. You know, we landed on Rosetta, and one of the elements was to look at all the molecules on this comet. Somebody described it as if you would have a nose on the comet of Rosetta, it would stink like a horse stable. So you have a lot of bioactive molecules. There's not life on Rosetta, but there is the pre-ingredients of life molecules. Dave Parker just was here in the session before. We are going to Mars, both the Mars sample return mission, which is part of NASA ESA project. Perseverance is currently drilling into the soil of Mars and getting out about 20 centimeter long cores. But it is very unlikely to have life still existing on the surface of Mars because of all the radiation problems of the difficult environment. So Rosalind Franklin, the Mars rover, the ExoMars rover, which will be launched this year, will actually drill much deeper. It will be the first one that can drill 2 meters deep into the soil. And if there is any life on Mars, like bacteria, subsoil bacteria, Rosalind Franklin might actually detect it. But the true kind of science fiction dream that we have, and that ties into Josef Aschbacher's accelerators and inspirators, and that ties into the new space approaches. We would love to fly to an icy moon in the solar system. Likely it could be Enceladus in the Saturn system. But for instance, Europa in the Jupiter system would also be an interesting target, but Europa is fully inside the Jupiter radiation belts. So we would need a magnetic shielding system to even land on Europa.
Is the target due to the name partly, or is it purely a scientific coincidence?
Galileo discovered these moons, and for some reason he named this moon Europa. But actually, it's more NASA currently that is pushing to land on Europa, while Europe is now dreaming of landing on Enceladus, which is a small moon in the Saturn system. The advantage of a small moon is that you can land and get back with a relatively small infrastructure. While when you land on a big planet like Mars or Europa, you need a whole slew of, you need separate missions with a rocket and a rover. So the Mars sample return concept is a huge logistic enterprise. We are dreaming of flying to the Enceladus moon. This is a moon which is covered with ice, with thick ice layers, but we know that there is liquid water below the ice, and we know that there is an earth, a kind of silicate-rich layer below. And this is the preconditions for the formation of life, similar to the oceans of Earth. So our best chance of getting life back, I mean bacteria, where we can look whether they have DNA and whether the DNA is around left or right winged. So a lot of the fundamental questions on the existence and formation of life, we could actually make with this icy moon sample return mission.
But the time span is very, very long. Just
it is a generational thing, right?
Yeah.
So it takes about 10 years to build it. It takes 10 years to fly to Saturn. You need to be there for a while, and then it takes 10 years to come back. So we will all be retired by that time. But I think the inspiration is there for the young generation. We need new brains, new minds in our society.
Can I please complete your question about European leaderships and worldwide leadership?
But I also just after you give your initial thoughts, wanted to ask you how difficult it is then working in an industry where the time span of innovation is very, very long. This is not 2-3 years to invent a new battery cell and take it to market. This is things were generational.
And we have to accelerate things. Everybody's thinking about it, yes. But because you spoke about James Webb telescopes or spaceborne telescopes, let's not forget that we have also ground-based European telescopes made by ESO, and that they are recognized as the best in the world.
Yes.
If you look at, for example, the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2019, there were 3 scientists working on black holes, but all the data they used came from European telescopes. And by the way, the science and then the research and then the technology which is behind this telescope is exactly the same as I mentioned earlier behind the way to certainly improve largely the data and communication.
Maybe you can say half of them came from Europe and half of them came from the US, because there were 2 groups that got the Nobel Prize, the European and the US. But indeed, I think we are really, Europe is starting to lead in that field as well.
Yeah, and even the US writes that. And ESA is launching also a new program called Next Generation Gravity Mission. With that, of course, we will be able to better know the gravity field of Earth, but that will allow also to follow oceans level, to measure the problem of ice melting, so better answers environmental needs about that. And once again, the accelerometers, the spaceborne accelerometers in Europe are certainly the best in the world. Even the US says that. They write that, and they use our spaceborne accelerometers. So there are fields in which we are clearly recognized as world leaders, as you asked for examples.
And just to go to Dan at the JRC, to pick up where you left off earlier, because you were talking about Copernicus and how JRC is working on new technologies to better use the data beaming down from those Sentinel satellites. How easy is it to try and figure out how to use this data? Now, it's there, it's free, it's public, but everyone talks constantly about finding the applications and the services that can be provided to researchers or also to just generally civil protection services from Galileo and Copernicus, and how easy is it for you guys at the JRC to deliver that?
So to be very blunt, it's not so easy, because it's you see the multitude and actor, and space is not anymore only the associated with the public actors, but a lot of private actors are appearing. So this is a complex environment, and just to go back to what I said about the knowledge center on Earth observation, in fact, what is trying to do the knowledge center is to try to put together 3 big communities: the policymaker, the academia, the science part, and here with JRC we have legs in both parts, and also the practitioners, the industry. And here we need to admit it's not so easy, because I'm very happy that the colleagues from the industry are here, because it's a complex environment. Regarding Galileo, I just want to mention that also we supported a lot the EU agency for the space program, EUSPA, in supporting and developing the Galileo. So we act as a key facilitator of the testing for the system, but also as independent source of technical and scientific know-how. And speaking about science in space, I think that one important element, role of science is to anticipate challenges and strategic dependencies. And here, because you spoke about data, what is important is to try to go further, and we are looking to further to look to the technologies, and we are trying now, we are in a course of establishing an observatory of critical technologies for space, defense, and related civil sectors. This is part of the strategic compass for security and defense that is established by the European Union. So the role of the observatory will be to identify critical technologies, monitor and assess these technologies in order to see their potential for applications and their also value and supply chains. And this is very important to see the dependency. So we will analyze the gap and risk, and will suggest some mitigation measures. And based on that, the Commission will come with some technology roadmap, which will address measures to enhance the technological sovereignty and mitigate this risk of strategic dependence. And I just want to finish, just to give a hand to Bruno, because I think that we didn't have the occasion to work before, but I think that it's very useful to try to establish some links between GRC, the Joint Research Center of the Commission, and ESTRE, the Association of Space Research Establishment, because I'm convinced that we can identify some interesting trends in space technology, and we can bring together some synergies. Thanks.
Okay, with pleasure.
Great. Yeah, even though you're online and we have Bruno here in person, we still use this conference to bring you both together. And yeah, we can certainly put you in touch.
We certainly will be able to do that, yes.
Supercharge the European space industry. Luca, just to come back to you, clearly we've spoken already about what your company does, how many people you have, what the target is, and how you're operating now. I wonder what the vision is in 10 years from now. What would D-Orbit look like, and what would it need to become a major player in the global space industry?
Yeah, so let me tell you first the vision, but without putting a year number on it, right? Otherwise, it's not a vision, right? So it's going to be a goal. So let's say what we are creating now is a space logistics infrastructure that not just to enable the existing like $1 trillion space economy, but also to enable the future expansion, like the human expansion in a sustainable space. And every word is really important. So sustainable. So if we don't start acting in a different way in space, there will be no business in the future and likely no science. And this is something that companies need to understand, but also governments, public institutions. So this is not a one-man task. This is a cooperation task. And human expansions, because in our vision, we see these infrastructures, this logistics infrastructure, connecting, at least in the first phase, Mars, the asteroid belt, Moon, and the Earth. Pretty much like you see islands on the sea, right? That they are connected by boats to transport goods and people. This is going to happen in the inner solar system as well. This will lead to like several advancements, especially on propulsion, that we are really, really far to have a good propulsion system in order, to have it accomplished. So let's say, for sure, in 8 years from now, we will have logistics services around the Earth and likely the Moon, with transportation and in-orbit servicing for satellites. In order to get to a real logistics infrastructure at the solar system level, we will need to work on other aspects. You will need to build the spaceships directly in space. And if we think about, it shouldn't sound so weird, right? We don't build the boats on the deserts and move them into the sea. So why should we build satellites on Earth if you are going to use them in space? And especially if you need to go into very specific missions, then you will need a different type of spaceship. So, but in order to build the spaceships in orbit, so orbital manufacturing, that now it's another trendy, science fiction word, you need to have local resource in order to build it. And that's why recycling in orbit is going to be another requirement. So these two steps are fundamental to get to a real logistics infrastructure in the solar planet, in the solar system. And then you can add on top many other activities. This could be good for science, this could be good for people, this could be good for business. And that's pretty much why we are doing what we do, and that's the roadmap that we plan to tackle in the following years.
And so that's the overall vision. What is the goal in the short term? Because I imagine having autonomous or manned plans producing satellites in orbit is going to take quite a long time to realize.
Well, depends, right? So it really depends on the market. So if the market is requiring vehicles that are lighter, bigger, or with special characteristics that only with space assembly you can get, and they are willing to pay for, this is going to accelerate like this type of activities in orbit. There are already companies that are working on that at worldwide level. There are programs in Europe as well that are directed to this goal. So I don't think it's going to take 10 years to get there. My honest opinion, seeing how the market is growing and the request from the market is growing as well. So our short term, so at the moment what we are doing is really creating a business that it's at the same time growing, but also enabling the ecosystem to grow. As I said at the beginning, the new space is fairly young. So, and as every young market is also fragile. So everything that we can do as a company, together with all the other companies that are operating in this domain, to make this new market more resilient, it is important, and it's going to pay back in the near term. So transporting satellites, reducing the risk of losing the satellites, increasing the type of service that they can deliver on Earth, that's our primary goal, and that's why we are focusing on last mile delivery. We have deployed in orbit more than 70 payloads so far in like about 15 months. So that's pretty much the speed at which we are moving. We are going to fly several other missions this year and next year. So, and that's a different type of speed with respect to what we were using in the past, right? Okay. The second step is going to be in orbit servicing. So we really want to create a sustainable space ecosystem in order for everyone else to run their business in a safe environment. And that's the short-term and medium-term activities that we are going to do.
Okay, so just quickly come to you, Andrea. We're running out of time because we've got to send everyone off to go and watch the final speeches here at the Space Conference. Andrea, just wondered from your side, looking at MIST, what would make your life easier from policymakers? We have obviously Gunther here from ESA. It's going to be a big year in terms of cost allocation and budgets, given the ministerial summit. Also, Dan from the JRC has a good line into the Commission. So you working on this project, what would make your life easier? What could they do for you?
Well, let's say this project will basically end in 2024. And it would be already nice to be able to prepare, let's say, a flight test and a planning for further development before that date, so that we can have a continuity. And so the idea is to basically boost the technology readiness level as soon as possible to get into a flight test. The easier path that we can see is a mission involving CubeSats. It's very easy it's relatively cheap, and it would be relatively easy to mount, to integrate our technology into a CubeSat. And actually in our board of advisors for the project, we have somebody from ESA, and they already told us that there could be a chance to actually integrate it even in a real mission. But of course, we are talking about 2026. probably a CubeSat mission could be something achievable even earlier. And also, we also got the attention from the Breakthrough Initiative, which is a non-profit, large organization that distributes prizes even higher than the Nobel Prize for the most innovative projects in the world, especially in space. And so, you know, I think it's really like a project that can make a big impact. And if it's followed properly, and if we have a plan, let's say, we know how to continue once we finish the project, the technology can take off pretty fast. So, yeah.
Okay. Thanks. And Dan, just from your side, you talked about the Commission roadmap that's coming. I guess that's the document maybe that we'll receive on January the 9th, perhaps. Can you give us any more details about what the Commission is planning in the space sector?
On February 9th.
Sorry, February, yeah.
Yeah, I think that very short, because the time is very short. So I mentioned you about the strategic compass for defense and security. And here, the European Commission, the European Union tries to put the objectives for defense and security for the next 10 years. And space is an important element, because space is geopolitical infrastructure, is critical and strategic in the same time. And I think that the key issue here is to bring more innovation in this sector. And this can be done through, if we speak about ideal partnership with the industry, with the private, with the public, but also with smart financing and procurement scheme. So this should be an ideal environment that can bring innovation and can boost then the strategic autonomy, the technological sovereignty, and the importance, the leader of Europe in the world. Thanks.
Thank you. And Bruno, the year ahead, what would you like from the European Commission, from ESA? You can tell Gunther directly next to you what you need potentially.
We are working as each of our institutions and as ESRE on ESA programs, on European Commission programs. In Europe, we are data providers, for example, one of the best world data providers. But we know that we will have more and more near-on data, so we are miniaturizing sensors, we are improving them inside ESA-led program, inside a European Commission program, and we are also, as a whole, as ESRE, discussing with the Commission, with ESA, to help them to better identify science and research and technology, to act as a counsel to them. We are involved in a discussion for the partnership, which has not been mentioned. That's the way we position ourselves, each of our establishments, and as a community, as an European association like ESRE.
Okay, understood. And Gunther, I left you to last, because I really wanted to end talking about the Ministerial Summit at the end of the year. Do you already know what kind of projects you're going to ask for more money from member states on?
Yes, so in the science program is basically a bottom-up driven process. So we are opening possibilities we have, for instance, currently an announcement of opportunity for the next M-class mission, which is going after Envision, which will go to Venus, and an F mission, which is coming after Comet Interceptor. So we're asking for a slight increase in our buying power so that we can include new elements. But I have a big plea for both the member states and also the European Commission, because as I said in the beginning, the science program is a partnership between the member states and ESA. The member states are providing the high-tech devices, the instruments, the detectors, and so on. And they require funding. If we are increasing our budget, the member states require funding for their institutions, for the research labs, and so on. And I believe that the European Commission can play a very important role there, not funding ESA, but funding, so to speak, the lever arm from the member states. And so we are not promising individual new projects, because we are promising slots, and then the community is actually reacting to that, and it's a competition. It's a true democratic process. Our ambition, I think, what we are promising is that we want to launch more science missions in the future than in the past. So that is the main thrust.
So the future looks rosy. We'll have to see how it develops. Thank you very, very much, Gunther. So that brings us to the end of today's session. I'm asked to remind everybody that in the Europe room, we're going to have closing addresses from Thomas Dermien. He's the Belgian State Secretary dealing with space affairs. Also, Romanian EPP MEP Marian Jean Marinescu, who's worked on space a lot from the European Parliament's end over recent years. Thank you to all our panelists for joining in today. I'm Josh Pisana, a reporter at Politico, and yeah, have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.